like to welcome everyone to the regular council meeting on Monday, May 2nd of 2016. But before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the territory we're working in this evening and where we'll reside and live in this beautiful city of the Snuneymuxw people. And also those viewers on TV and those watching webcast, welcome as well. So I'd like to call the regular meeting to order. At this time, Ms. Smith, is there any introduction of late items?
Thank you, Your Worship. For late items, on the addendum, you'll see that item 8H, development permit number DP989, Glen Oaks Drive. We've got a delegation from Mr. Keith Brown to add. Item 8M, bylaw contravention notice for 646 Beach Drive. Please remove that report. As well as 8O, the bylaw contravention notice for 683rd Street. Also, not included on the addendum, we're removing item 9A, which is the travel assistance grant for Curl BC. That report will be removed tonight. As well as 9C, it's the unauthorized suite report. Only one property will now remain, and that's on Portsmouth. Remove 96 Princess Street from that report. Also, item 9D, property maintenance bylaw. Remove the following properties. Number 1, 1400 Wingrove Street. Number 6, 339 Watfield Avenue. And number 7, 156 View Street.
Thank you. Can I have a mover, please, to motion for adoption of the agenda, please?
I have a late item.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Kipp?
Yes, I have Mr. Terry Wagger would like to speak to item 8D as a late delegation. 8D.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Chair. At the request of the Mayor, he wanted us to see if we can defer 14A until he returns for discussion.
(14A). Okay, I'm going to go back to the 1 sec, Councillor Hong. To Councillor Kipp's addition to Mr. Wagner. Can I have a can I just make a global motion of all the agenda adjustments? Thank you. I have Councillor Bestwick. Was your name up?
It will be, but it wasn't.
Okay. Can I have a motion, please, for the amended agenda? Moved by Councillor Pratt. Second by Councillor Fuller. Any discussion?
Yes.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. So does this motion include the removal of 14A?
Yes.
And if I might, given the fact that 14A is a notice of motion that was provided 2 weeks ago, and given that the opportunity would have made itself available for the mayor to ask me, the mover, the person that, fair enough. My point, Councillor Hong, is that this is a notice of motion that I made 2 weeks ago. And if the mayor would like for me to remove my notice of motion for a later date, then I would have liked the mayor to reach out to me directly, which did not take place. So that said, I will not be voting in favor of the agenda as amended, with 14A included.
Councillor Brennan.
Is this a motion to delete 14A or to postpone it to the next meeting? Postpone? Okay. Well, I would speak in favor of that then. I think we have, as a group of us, we have said we understand we need to be more respectful of one another. We need to show that to the public that's the path we're on. And so the mayor has, he's not well. He's asked if we could consider this issue in the following meeting. I think this is the first really tangible opportunity we have to show to the public that it is our intention to try to work together to move the business along. I just think that it would be a good signal that we're prepared to do that. So I would support it on the basis that the mayor asked for that.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick?
Well, I'd just like to respond. To me, this is not an issue of respect or disrespect or our very first opportunity to advance our relationship building. We've been relationship building for about a year and a half, and I would like to suggest that any people that are observing on the web or at home on TV or in the audience have seen a marked improvement on how this council has conducted its business and its affairs and moving the business of the city forward in the most recent months. This is an opportunity for people to vote. This is democracy. If you wish to vote in favor of the agenda as amended, which includes 14A, then vote in favor of the agenda. I'm just being honest and forthright and open that I would like to deal with it tonight. If the majority of council chooses not to, then I suspect that democracy will be 5-3 or 7-1 or whatever it might be, and we'll move on. Not a problem. But I don't want it to enter into the arena of how we get along, because I think we get along great. Thank you.
Councillor Fuller?
I have to agree with Councillor Bestwick on this one. I think things have markedly improved. Respect would have been to consult with Councillor Bestwick before bringing it to the rest of council and say, I've talked to Councillor Bestwick. He's got a good motion on the table, but I'm sick and not feeling well, and he has agreed to move it. Would the rest of you agree? That would have been respect. That he's sick, I feel for him. I'm not feeling well myself tonight. I haven't been feeling well for a few days. I'm here regardless. And what if he misses the next meeting that we're putting this on, that we would defer it to? So thinking of it in that respect, I am not going to support moving it at this time. And that's out of respect to Councillor Bestwick.
We have a motion on the table. Before we vote on this, I'd like to actually, Ms. Smith, the recommended changes to the agenda are Mr. Wager was one on, I forget, 8 something. And what were the other changes?
The 3 noted on the agenda.
Yes, yes.
To a report, the curling report is removed. Princess Street from the unauthorized suites, and 3 properties under property maintenance, as well as postponing consideration of 14A, which would remove it from this agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Hung?
I could pull that one and we can all just vote when it comes, because it's, I'll put the motion forward to defer it when it comes, because I do want to move the agenda forward. If we're going to vote against the agenda, it doesn't make any sense. So we'll just do that when it comes, and we'll leave it on the agenda, because I said it's just a deferral motion. It's not to eliminate it from that, so it doesn't make a difference if we do it here or now or not to move the agenda forward.
So are you removing your motion?
Yeah. Well, yeah, the amendment.
We don't have an amended agenda yet because we haven't got that point.
Yeah.
So are you just removing your original?
Yes.
Okay, so Councillor Hong is removing his comment on 14A, so we can get on with the agenda.
Yes.
Council, all in favor of the amended agenda? Sorry, Ms. Smith?
You may want to just amend your motion just to state that you're not considering item 14A. I know it's just so that it shows in the minutes.
Sure. Can you read the language, please, for me?
Yeah.
For the motion, I mean. Thank you.
For the amendment motion,
Yes.
it's just that council would amend the agenda amend the motion to remove item 14A from the list that was previously presented.
Clear. All in favor?
Okay.
Opposed? Passed?
We didn't have a mover and seconder for that.
Oh, yeah, I thought we did, actually. Okay, can I have a mover, please, with the amended wording? Moved by Councillor Kipp, second by Councillor Fuller. All in favor? Passed, thank you. And for those out there, apologize. This is not...
No, sorry, excuse me, that now the main motion as amended.
Yeah. I so move.
Moved by Councillor Pratt, second by Councillor Kipp. All in favor? Passed, thank you.
Move adoption of the minutes. Second.
Moved by Councillor Kipp, second by Councillor Thorpe. Motion adoption of minutes. All in favor? Thank you. Holy smokes. All right. At this time, I'd like to call up on the agenda 8A, 2015 annual financial statements. Please, may I please call up Miss Nancy A.D. McKay from KPMG.
Good evening, Council. My name is Victor Merma, Director of Finance for the City of Nanaimo, and I'm going to share a few comments on the financial statements, then I'll hand it over to Ms. Nancy, who is our auditor from KPMG. In front of you is a report that requests for your approval of the financial statements as of at the end of 2015. The process that we are following is one, as per auditing standards, we are required to bring this in front of you so you can approve it before the auditor finalizes this. And once that process is done, we will submit the same financial statements by May 15 to the Inspector of Municipalities as part of our legislative requirements and obligations. The audit is now complete, and I will leave the comments on the outcomes to KPMG. In terms of highlights, the financial statements record that at the end of 2015, our accumulated unallocated surpluses are at 15.8 million. And if you recall, sometime in February, we came with a report that indicated that the in-year or the 2015 surplus was $5 million. So it grew from $10 million to $15 million. These funds are held as kind of like the rainy day funds, where we can actually draw when we need to take care of things that we would have not planned for. We are also holding some reserves in the amount of about $123 million. And part of that, we have about $25 million in continuing projects and work, which is work in progress. Then we have surpluses of about $40 million, DCCs of about $39 million, and other reserves, statutory reserves of about $19 million. Our debt came down by about $3 million. At the end of 2014, we had about $50.9 million. Now it's down to $47.8 million, indicating payments in 2015. Our tangible capital assets, they grew from $655 million in 2014 to $670 million in 2015. In short, our financial position remains strong, and we believe that the process that we have followed would help us make the information easy for people to access and for people to ask questions as we move forward in the process. I will leave this moment to Ms. Nancy.
Thank you, Victor. So it's Nancy A.D. McKay from KPMG. And I'm just here to report today that we are ready to issue a clean audit opinion pending your approval of the financial statements. We had the full cooperation of management during our audit, and there are no outstanding issues or items that would prevent us from issuing our clean audit opinion. We conducted our audit using a materiality level that's consistent with the industry, so it's a percentage of expenses, so we used 2.4%. And we only identified 2 audit differences during our audit, and they really related to timing, two timing issues. And they were not at a level that gave us any concern. We focused on 4 main areas that were material transactions during the year. We looked at the water treatment plant, given the cost of that involved, and we found no unusual items. Everything was as we would expect. We looked at the dam and made sure that the costs associated there aligned with the budget approval. There are 2, we had an audit difference there because there were some additional costs that were to be incurred after year end, and we just recommended that those be accrued at December. We looked at storm assets because during the year it was discovered that not all of the assets were captured when the new accounting standards came into effect in 2009. So that adjustment was catching up this year. So by the end of the year, the statement of financial position is fairly stated. And we also looked at there was a new accounting standard that was implemented during the year related to contaminated sites. We took a look at the process that the finance department went over, and we were comfortable that all of the assets were captured and appropriately valued. We were independent throughout our audit and remain so today. And I just would like to express my gratitude to the finance department for the effort and diligence that they put into getting everything ready for the audit and for seeking guidance throughout the year as issues arose. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Council. Thank you for presentation. Council, any questions for the presentation? In seeing that, can I have a motion, please? Moved by Councillor Thorpe, seconded by Councillor Pratt, that Council approve the 2015 annual financial statements for the City of Nanaimo. Any discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming forward and great work. Thank you, Victor. (8B) 2015 Development Cost Charge Reserve Fund Report. Moved by Councillor Kipp, second by Councillor Bestwick. Thank you. All in favor? 8D, acting mayor pay rate. At this time, Council, being my first chair, is this time I call it for? Oh, sorry. Oh, 8C. 2015 Annual Parking Reserve Fund Report. Councillor Councillor Hong.
I'll second it.
Moved by Councillor Hong, second by Councillor Thorpe to move the recommendation for the report. Thank you. All in favor? Sorry. Discussion. Councillor Kipp.
I noticed in one of the parking reserve funds, the Old City Parking Reserve, which I understand is that $3,000 payment. It's $85,000, and I understand that account hasn't been used for a long, long time. I've had some questions, since 14 years. So how long? Is it a statutory by the way it is? But it can be changed, or can it not be? This is just the one for Old City where if you don't have parking available on your site, you will in fact can pay the city $3,000 per parking site. But this fund's just sat there for a long time with $85,000. So what is it used for? And should it be allocated for something different if it's sat there and not been used?
Through the chair, there are 2 questions. The first one is, can the purpose be changed? Yes, it can, but you have to go through a process of amending the bylaw that's attached to it. The second question is the use of the money there. I think it was set up as a way to collect funds for those who were not going to provide parking on as required, and they will provide funds so that the city could make the parking available elsewhere.
Well, if I can, we got by the Occidental Hotel, we have a parking lot there. But we traded land with the school board for that. But so this wasn't used for any of that. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kipp. All in favor? Passing unanimously. Thank you. 8D, acting mayor pay rate. At this time, may I please call upon late delegation, Mr. Terry Wager.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to you all for your efforts to get to get a hold of the situation with the mayor and his activities and institute these types of controls that are under 8D. Thank you for that. But I have a question to begin with. It's my understanding that this 10% that you guys are paying for yourself, which I approve of, by the way, I've decided that's a good idea. If you're going to have to do some extra work, perhaps you should get paid a little bit extra for it. But my concern is, where's the money coming from? Where's this 10% actually coming from? Is it coming from general revenue or some such thing?
Just at this time, I'd like to defer that over to you, please, Victor.
Through the chair, the $10,000 that's required would be allocated from a contingent amount that's already provided for in the budget. So this is not extra funding.
Okay, thank you. So I would consider then that, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, but I just don't think you're going far enough. I would like you to consider delaying this and instead introduce another motion that perhaps a bylaw or whatever is required to do it legally so that you could get the mayor to pay for it out of his salary. I'm saying we should dock the mayor's salary to pay for the 10%. If it's 10% of the mayor's salary, then the mayor should only get 90% of his salary. And I would further like to suggest that you pass a bylaw that limits or docks the mayor for every meeting that he misses without justification. Because it's my understanding that he misses a lot of meetings. And I don't like the idea of paying him for not doing his job. So I would suggest that perhaps it might be possible to make a bylaw to dock his pay for work. That's it. That's in my presentation. Please consider that.
Thank you, Mr. Wager. I have Mr. Councillor Fuller has a question or comment.
Are you aware that the community charter sets out how many meetings we can and cannot miss, and that the mayor is actually, despite the huge increase in missed meetings, actually meeting the community charter guidelines?
Yes, I'm aware of that. What I'm wondering is it legal, as I said, to pass a bylaw that says that nonetheless you can limit his pay for meetings?
Yeah. And that I couldn't answer you, because that I don't know.
I'm asking that you investigate it and see if it's legal, and if it is legal, do it. Because why pay him for doing something he's not doing? There's only so many excuses that fly by me. I would have been fired 1,000,000 times by now for missing that much time from my jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Wager. Moved by Councillor Kipp, second by Councillor Bestwick to receive the delegation. All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. 8D, Councillor Bestwick.
I would so move that council set the acting mayor pay rate at 10% of the mayor's base compensation and direct staff to amend the council spending and amenities policy accordingly.
Second by Councillor Pratt. Any discussion? Councillor Fuller.
At the beginning of the meeting, we were talking about respect. And to me, if that respect was truly being shown, then we would not be needing to do a acting pay raise, acting mayor pay rate. We wouldn't have to be doing that if there was a respect for all members of council. You know, we come to meetings when we're supposed to. We don't leave meetings early, unless it's extremely important. I missed 4 months, and I don't think anybody would begrudge me that, because that was an extenuating circumstance. I'm not going to support the pay rate. I like the idea Mr. Wager had talked about I would support it if that 10% came from the mayor's pay. And if the mayor truly respected council and he intends to miss upwards of 33% of the meetings as he has in the past, and he respected council, then he would volunteer at that 10%. So I won't be supporting the pay raise.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, unlike my colleague, Councillor Fuller, I'm not convinced that it is necessary to increase the duties of the acting mayor. I think what we're doing here is providing oversight to the activities of the mayor, as opposed to what I think generally we should be doing, and that is ensuring that there is backup to the duties when the mayor is not available. I haven't seen the need for the oversight role, and so it just hasn't been made clear to me. So I won't support this.
Yes, sorry. Oh, your name was up here. Any other, all in favor? Opposed? 2 opposed. Thank you. 8E, alternate approval process results. Beaufort Park dedication, removal and disposal of bylaw 2016 number 7225.
I'll move, Councillor Kipp. Move staff recommendation that council receive the results of the alternate approval process related to Beaufort Park dedication, removal and disposal bylaw 2016, number 7225.
Moved by Councillor Thorpe, second by Councillor Bestwick. All in favor, or any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. 8F.
I would so move staff's recommendation that council receive the report pertaining to the City of Nanaimo zoning amendment bylaw 2016, number 4500.098.
Second by Councillor Fuller. Any discussion? All in favor? Pass unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Oh, I can't speak out loud here. Bylaw. We're on a bylaw.
Move the zoning amendment bylaw 2016 4500.098, that is RA 358, to rezone the portion of 69 Lauren Place from Parks, Recreation, Culture 2, PRC 2, to Hospital Urban Center CC5, and to rezone the portion of 1515 Dufferin Crescent from Hospital Urban Center CC5 to Parks, Recreation, Culture PRC 2, pass first reading.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Kipp, second by Councillor Thorpe. All in favor? Pass unanimously.
And move the zoning amendment bylaw 2016 number 4500.098 pass second reading.
Seconded.
Moved by Councillor Kipp, second by Councillor Thorpe. All in favor? Thank you. 8G, development permit number DP 994253 Victoria Road.
I move that council issue development permit number DP 994 at 253 Victoria Road with the following variances. Allow residential use on the ground floor instead of commercial. Reduce the flanking side yard setback from 3.5 to 2.55 meters. And allow access from a local road.
Moved by Councillor Kipp, second by Councillor Bestwick. All in favor?
Oh.
I'm sorry. Councillor Fuller, I should look up. My bad.
I'm wondering if through yourself, your eminence.
My what?
Your eminence. I just thought that fits. You deserve big credit for being a great acting mayor there, Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you.
Through yourself to Mr. Lindsay, is this pretty much the same variances that existed on the development permit before?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the same application, so yes, the same variances.
Okay, thanks.
Any other discussion, Council? All in favor? Pass unanimously. 8H, development permit number DP 9893795 Glen Oaks Drive. First, we have a delegate, Mr. Keith Brown. Please come forward, please, sir. Thank you. It's all yours.
Worship and councillors, we circularized copies of the submission. The development permit amendment application has been presented on behalf of Satker Developments. The amendments are to the existing DP which provided for modified road construction standards. That was by the original subdivider. Roadside parking and landscaping. It dealt with the roadside parking and landscaping. These road standards were modified to address the steep slope terrain for the overall subdivision R10 zoning. When the client purchased Lot 15, the topography was not particularly steep. If you looked at it compared to the rest of the areas, you'll find that it's just an average side hill lot. In accordance with the updated zoning bylaw 4500, Lot 15 contained adequate area to accommodate 2 dwelling units under the R10 zoning. The client applied for and was granted building permits for 2 single-family dwellings on Lot 15. The City of Nanaimo subsequently issued a PLA for a 2-lot subdivision. That's on enclosure 1 and 2 on your maps. On the maps attached. Are you on there? First point, common access be provided between existing Lot 16, 3603 Glen Oaks Drive, and Lot 15, purchased by Satgar Developments. The modified road standards relating to access for the proposed 2 single-family lots now becoming an extended 3-lot common driveway access existing for Lot 16. Again, looking at C enclosure 3. So what happens by approving the subdivision and a home on each, the first A and B, the new subdivision is Lot A and B. The lot to the west is 15. Lot 16 was subdivided. So therefore, there's a common access that the staff are recommended for Lot 16, neighbor, and one of the new lots called Lot A. By creating Lot B, they created an extended common driveway, as you can see on the map there, map number 3, which goes across 2 full frontages of lots, and actually a portion of the third. To date, the developer has constructed 2 single-family homes, ranchers with crawl spaces, on proposed subdivisions lots A and B, seeing enclosure 2. And we point out that we're showing a single access there. And subdivision plan. Accordingly, we submit that the proposed Lot B will support its own access with an on-site turnaround permitting vehicles to turn around on the site, eliminating vehicles backing out onto Glen Oaks Drive. Now, I'm just going to digress for a moment. A lot of the homes on the steep slopes like Nottingham, and I can go on Malspine, and there's just a few of them, Rutherford Road, a lot of them back out onto the streets. By far, the majority of lots are backing out onto the streets. The access crossing over the mountable concrete curb sidewalk comprises a width of 20 feet, which represents a loss of 1 roadside parking space. The existing parallel roadside parking provided in this submission may accommodate fewer than the anticipated number of parking cars due to the fact that the stalls are not marked. The staff, in their report to you, talks about the reduction of parking. We're talking 1 parking space. When they threw out percentages like 48% or reduction of 52%, that was for the, because it doesn't state it clearly, but I assume it meant for the overall development all the way up the road. It was reduced by those numbers. Our is reducing by 1. Now, that 48%, when you go, I drove 4 or 5 of the major roads, steep slope roads, that have never come under these regulations, and there's no more than 6, 7, 8 cars parked on the curb side of the road or shoulders of the road on any of those roads. The only place you really see a lot of stacked up vehicles is during the construction. And if there's 4 or 5 homes being constructed, every trade is in building and loading materials. But the bottom line, it's not a parking issue. It's 1 parking is what we're trying to clean up. The anticipated loss of the 1 roadside parking space would be resolved through reducing the boulevard landscaping planting area as indicated fronting proposed Lot B and replaced with 1 paving parking space. Enclosure 4 shows you that. If it's in 4 up, there you are there. You can see the existing parking that we would construct. And if you look in your diagram to the far right, that is actually a landscape shoulder. Now the landscaping is really bark mulch and boulevard trees. So we're not trying to cut short on the landscaping. We can add landscaping in or intensify the landscaping. We're just a matter of trying to create, I think it's very appropriate to seek one access for that single-family home. Given consideration, we request the existing DP be amended as follows. To permit a separate 20-foot wide access to proposed subdivision Lot B, to permit relocation of the lost 20 feet of parking area and constructing of an equivalent area of parking fronting the proposed Lot B as shown. There's an exchange there. And if there's a cost applicable to that we would respect. We submit that all costs relating to the reposition of proposed Lot 15 access will be the responsibility of the developer. Further, the subdivision registration of Lot 15 will generate. Now, here's what I'm pointing out. If that was approved as a lot, it generates an additional $16,000 on DCCs from what's already been paid by the developer for the overall subdivision to the city with annual taxes of about $3,000 to $3,500 a year. We submit the foregoing amendments to the existing DP are complementary and do not compromise the principles of the modified road standards approved by Glen Oaks Drive. I'm just holding back. I could say more, but I'm not. Several points have been responded to. We recently drove several steep slope subdivisions. We're noticing there is cars on the road, and all honesty, 6, 7, 8, maybe in some of the streets. They're shoulder parked individually. One car has made a shoulder park for himself, or the curbing allows such, or the shoulders allow such. The staff report suggests extra units, i.e. secondary suites. There is no secondary suites. They're single-family homes on crawl spaces. The actual building construction is a single-family. Okay. We are submitting an alternative access location to the exchange for 20 feet of designated parking. That's the key issue right there. And from the point we're not pressing on this, but it is a point when you can provide a hammerhead on your property so the vehicle can come out of the garage and make its back up and head out forward with their vehicle onto the street is at least 100% safer than backing out. And most cars back out. So that's my submission. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for the delegate? Thank you, sir. Can I have a motion, please, to receive the delegation? Councillor Kitt moves. Second by Councillor Thorpe. All in favor? Thank you, and thank you, sir. (8H). I have a staff recommendation in front of us, Council. Councillor Bestwick.
Move staff's recommendation.
Second by Councillor Kipp. All in favor? Oh, sorry. Any discussion? Councillor Brandon?
Can I have the staff respond to the question of whether there will be, like, the impact on the on-street parking, the difference of opinion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would maybe ask council to look at one of the images in your agenda. Page 131 may help with the discussion, but the development permit itself, which laid out this entire subdivision, was approved in 2008. And at that time, there was an alternative road standard which was approved for the entire subdivision. So if you go out there today, you'll notice a very different road standard than what you would see in almost any other subdivision in Nanaimo. It's a narrow travel lane, and it has a number of parking pockets, I guess you would call them, along both sides of the road where you can pull out off of the main lane and park. Because of the design, and this is the number we referred to in the report, because of that design, and it was identified at that time in 2008 that we would lose a significant portion of the on-street parking that we would normally get if you applied the city standard. So when we talk about the 48%, that's over the delegation was correct, that's over the entire development. At that time, we projected a reduction of about 50% of on-street parking. So our part of our rationale in our report this evening is the access would come out through one of those parking pockets. And although it's only one, it would reduce the amount of on-street parking. I know I've heard the applicants say that they could potentially add additional parking. Those areas are landscaped areas now, so they'd have to be vetted to see whether additional parking could be provided there or not.
Any more comments, Councilor Brennan,
Yeah,
or questions?
I'm a little stuck on this because I'm not sure what the alternative is for the applicant. If this is denied, then where does that leave the applicant in terms of?
So speaking to the same image, so lot 16 is on the left side of that red polygon. Lot 15 is the lot that's in question here this evening. This is an image from the original development permit, where at that time it was anticipated that there'd be one home constructed on lot 15. And in many places throughout the development, you'll see this where access was consolidated between two properties in order to increase the amount of potential for landscaping and on-street parking. So between lot 16 and 15 was one of those locations. After the development permit's approved, the zoning bylaw was amended, and the change in density actually allowed an additional unit on lot 15. So that it was purchased by the applicant, and they went ahead with the understanding that they could, in fact, build 2 dwelling units. The bylaw allows those could be 2 dwelling units in one building or 2 detached units. At that time, it was identified that the original development permit still applied, and that all access for this property, lot 15, would still be from the location identified in the original development permit. So the applicant was made aware of that at the time. They made a building permit application to design the property to accommodate from that access as shown on the image here. Subsequently, they made a subdivision application. It's not yet been approved, but the subdivision application has been received, and a condition of that PLA was that, again, that this access be used and no additional access would be obtained to the road.
Okay, this you might not be able to answer, but what is the most significant impairment to the developer if council decides to stay with the way it is? What is it? What's the impairment that the applicant is distressed about?
So I think I probably shouldn't speak for the applicant, but I think if you saw one of the earlier images that was presented by Mr. Brown, he showed you what would have to happen on the property if the access was denied, and that would be a common driveway that would run along adjacent to the road and utilize that existing pre-approved access point.
Okay, so that's, what is that? Maybe somebody could, one of these guys could answer, because I'd like to know, why is that a problem? Well, what's the problem with sharing a driveway? Is it aesthetics? Is it some other reason? What? Tell me why this is, to share a driveway is a bad idea.
So, Councilor, do I have to make a motion to, or is there a wish to have the applicant answer Councilor Brendan's questions? Is it?
I'd like to.
Perfect. Please, sir.
Thank you, Gurman Haas, 3205 Ridgeview Place, and I'm a BC owner on behalf of the applicant Keith Brown, here to speak in support of this. That's not the right terminology, because I don't want it denied. So I'm not too sure what the right terminology is. But first, regarding these parking pockets, there is no normal amount of on-street parking. That's just a bonus the city looks forward to acquire in design. And in fact, they are limiting design and parking on street by telling developers where to put the letdowns, where the non-mountable curb is, and where the mountable curb is. So they are forcing the hand of the developer when they're doing the design. And they're not doing the design in conjunction with the developers. They're just going at it ad hoc, telling where the hydro poles and lights and streets are doing when they're doing their own design in-house. So that being said, we do need the approval of lot 16, my neighbor, so there's a hardship there where I have to go to my neighbor now, because this new lot would also have to have a common reciprocal easement over the 2 properties, where right now, if it remains shared, it just shared between 15 and 16, and this 3rd lot now would have to be added to this reciprocal easement, which staff hasn't mentioned, so I have to go to him and get a legal document to have that registered on the property as well. And again, the other issues that have arisen are in my rationale letter, and they're all based on the fact that if the city's asking for this design, the excuse me just for a second. There's, can get this. Sorry.
Your rationale letter is in the...
Yeah, so that comment, well, first of all, I also, when I was doing the subdivision, I have the support of my neighbors as well, so I've talked to them. I'm just trying to find my rationale letter here so I can go over the 4 or 5 points I've mentioned.
I've got it up here if you want to look at it.
Yeah, could you just bring that up so I could just speak to those points?
Page 136, I believe it is. Page 136?
135, 136.
Here it is. That's right there?
Yeah, and all these hardships, and as the staff report says, are created by me. That's not true. The fact that they want this common access has created these problems. If we have a newly created lot and a fee simple lot, like any other common lot in the city of Nanaimo, enjoys their own access. In fact, this property has 99.81 meters of frontage, where any lot greater than 25 meters can apply for a second access, and staff can verify that. But having said that, we also have proved through a site visibility, which is slide 5 in your application package, that the sight lines are not impaired, so there's no engineering issues with providing a new access to the new lot. That was done through Newcastle Engineering, a very prominent firm here in Nanaimo. In fact, they've helped me come up with these issues. When cars would be traveling down that common access, their headlights would be shining down counter to traffic, creating the first problem. Also, you're seeing other problems created in the city where these common accesses are now, with the city growing, and coach houses and laneways and businesses coming onto properties. The guests and vehicle traffic, if blocking this access, it would impair the other properties, creating another problem. So that becomes a legal problem, not only with the city, but with the neighbors, causing issues. So why create that if you can avoid that? It limits the enjoyment of the front yards. We're proposing a nice landscape at the front. All the other homes have landscaping in front yards and not driveways through their front yards. So it limits the opportunity on both lots, which, I'm going to have a nice, I don't know if you guys have seen the sites, but you can put a nice retaining wall up. We have the hammerhead opportunity. We have nice streetscape on the front of each of the properties, and they can have have verandas on these homes where they can enjoy the front of their properties. So I think if this application is denied, it would be the only lot with this awkward shared access. And then also, with respect to staff, I implore you, we've kicked the can quite a few times to come up with this rendition and this plan. There is no staggering or altering the buildings or changing them that would create a good access from a single point. The best point would have been to have this new access.
I'm just going to jump in here, please, Gert, just for a second. But please, if you don't mind remaining, because Councillor Brennan, did that help some of your questions before I go to the other speakers? And they may be towards the proponent, I'm not sure.
Yes.
Thank you. The rest of the speakers, would we want the proponent to be up here in case you have any questions, or is that good with with them?
I have no questions for him.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, I just want to reiterate, we have the sightline visibility, the legal issues it causes, and it's the only one in the whole subdivision and any other areas like that would have this common access. And I think you're having other issues that have come forward that are created by these common accesses. So I hope you do the opposite of what staff's asking and not deny this, but support this new amendment to the development permit 989.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I got Councillor Pratt. I got a list here. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And I don't have any questions for you. I did go up there and look at the site this afternoon, and I have to say, given the frontage of this property, which is, as the proponent has mentioned, it's quite wide. And when I look at where the two buildings are planned, where he plans to put those two buildings, it does not make a lot of sense to me to have a common driveway running along the front of those two buildings and then up into their drive area, it would take up most of the front yard by the looks of things. I honestly think for the sake of one parking spot, and I don't like to go against staff in these situations, but when I look at this, it makes more sense to me to have two accesses rather than one, and that's the way I'm kind of leaning at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt. I got Councillor Fuller. And Councillor Fuller, would you like the question to the proponent?
Yeah, actually, I had a question for... Yeah. Sacker. Sorry. Gur. Are these houses constructed?
Yes, they are.
So, and prior to them being constructed, you were aware of the joint driveway?
Yes.
Thanks.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I think that was kind of what I was going to ask staff. I think Councillor Fuller asked is, had this come before anything was constructed, I would look at a variance. But the fact that this was pushed through and then coming to us after it's built, it makes it hard. And I don't want to be undermining staff's thing. Like, if it would have come before it was built and we could have looked at a variance, I would have considered it a lot more. But going up there, having a place that was already built and then now coming to us for a variance, when they knew what staffs were asking, it kind of makes it hard for me to go against what staff is requesting. And I think it's fair for what staff is requesting. And they had the option of coming to council before for these variances, and they didn't until after the fact. So I don't want to be held and bound by the fact that the building is already there now. We feel obligated for us to give them a variance. That's not the way that variances should work, in my opinion. They should come before council, before anything is built, or a mistake was made, and then for us to correct it, but not for forgiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hong. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Thank you. Just a couple of questions to staff, please. Mr. Lindsay, the delegation made reference to a third lot. In this staff report tonight, we're not discussing a third lot, to my knowledge. Could you please enlighten me on what the third lot option reference is, please?
Oh, sorry. Mr. Chairman, maybe I'll just ask that we go back to map or the site plan on page 131 for a second. So this image again is the drawing from the original 2008 development permit. Lot 15, so within that red polygon, there's two lots. I know it's difficult to see on this map. There's lot 15 and lot 16. Those lots exist today. The subject property is lot 15, so the one on the right-hand side of the image. So that's the subject of this evening's discussion. So on that lot today, if you went out there, you would see there's two detached dwelling units constructed on that property. What the applicants are proposing are to subdivide lot 15 in order to create two lots. So where there was originally two here within that red polygon, there would now be three lots.
Thank you. Just to follow up, Mr. Chair, if I may. And what happens with a subdivision application to lot 15 if approved, would be carriage houses or secondary suites, or how does a subdivision application, what does it trigger?
Thank you. So at present, lot 15 is allowed to have two dwelling units on it, but under the bylaw, those units cannot contain suites. If the property is subdivided and each of those existing homes ends up on two separate titles, then each of those buildings, in theory, could be retrofitted to include secondary suites. They would be allowed.
Is it reasonable for me to assume then there would have to be a parking variance if that were to happen? And I know that it's very difficult to be speculative, but
A secondary suite on the property requires 3 on-site parking stalls. So without looking at them in detail, I couldn't say whether the existing lots could accommodate 3, but generally, if it's a 1 or 2 car garage and there's a driveway, you can fairly often meet that minimum of 3 parking stalls on site.
Thank you. And given that this street is extremely narrow as it stands now with houses on both sides, it's reasonable to say that the likelihood of single traffic through there is probably very likely? Single lane traffic?
Certainly the aisle, drive aisle width is narrow, but it does allow for two-way traffic. So in a normal subdivision built today, you would see cars parked on both sides, and the drive aisle in the middle becomes narrow enough that you're almost waiting for vehicles in the other direction to go by you at peak times in the evening, for example, when there's a lot of on-street parking. In this site, because all the parking's off of the shoulders in these parking pods, you would not have that same issue. The narrowness of the road would definitely require people to drive slow. By the very design, it's going to require you to drive slow, but there is adequate width there for 2 vehicles to pass.
Thank you. And similar to Councillor Hong, it's really difficult for me to challenge staff's discretion or ruling on this. And when I was there on more than one occasion, and most recent today, I find the traffic accessibility through their single passing anybody is virtually not possible. I don't know how 2 cars could pass through there. But that was just my experiences. I can't speak for everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Besser. Councillor Brennan?
Is there a motion yet
It's on the table.
to approve or to deny the application? Okay. I can remember when this original subdivision was applied for, and it was something that impressed council. It was a new approach, and it aspired to a new type of subdivision, something with a greener imprint. It was very attractive to council at the time. And I'm sure it still is. I respect staff as much as anybody else, and I am, generally speaking, going to listen to them and their opinions on these kinds of things. But for me, this application makes sense. It just makes sense. I don't feel that the downsides are strong enough to say no to this. I don't feel obligated to either staff or to the proponent. I mean, our job here is to just consider the merits of the application itself. And based on those merits, I think that the application should go forward. I think we should approve it. I note that it is the both houses are only have crawl spaces, so the likelihood of a suite is. There could be, I suppose, but those are the kinds of things, I guess, that would be looked at the time of the application. But right now, this application is in front of us, and this application has a crawl space, and we lose 1 parking spot. I don't think it interferes with the concept, the original concept of the subdivision there, so I'm going to support the application.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. Councillor Pratt.
Thank you. I'm just a little bit confused about this image because on page 134, we have a very different image of the 2 properties, of the 2 houses. These are the 2 houses that exist. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is correct. So if going back to that previous map, without flipping back for a second, so if you looked at the 2 houses that are dashed in the footprint there. So those are the two homes that currently sit on lot 15.
Right.
The boundary that's shown between those two outlines does not currently exist. That's a proposed subdivision boundary. So if you went back and you did look at the polygon on the other page, it would be lot 15 and lot 16, which was the one just to the left there.
Okay.
So what's missing in this image is the two homes that are now constructed on lot 15. They don't show. What shows is the original approved development permit, which contemplated one house on lot 15 and one house on lot 16.
So this was the original suggestion, and now going back to the other one, this is what actually exists.
What exists there today is the two homes, notwithstanding that the property line doesn't exist between the two of them.
Right.
Currently, it's two homes sitting on one property.
Okay. And they could subdivide that into two properties?
They have what we call a preliminary layout acceptance, PLA approval
Okay.
and subdivision, with the condition.
So with this layout, there wouldn't be a third house.
There's no additional homes being built beyond what's currently there today.
So talking about a third property isn't part of the equation with this one.
If the subdivision's approved, you go from 2 to eventually 3 lots.
Where would the
But-
other lot be?
It doesn't exist yet, so it would be a split of lot 15 into 2 properties. So the homes are there, but the lot doesn't exist. So before and after, you'd still have 3 buildings there. It wouldn't look any different on the ground. In terms of the title, you go from 2 property titles to 3 property titles.
Okay. Given that it is, that they are on crawl spaces, and given the positioning of the houses, I think this is a fairly reasonable request, and I have to agree with Councillor Brennan in this case. I normally would not question staff, but when I look at this, to me, it just makes sense to have 2 separate accesses, and for the sacrificing of 1 parking spot, I can't support the staff recommendation in this case. I just can't. It just doesn't make sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the comments of Councillor Pratt and Councillor Brennan, and I've also looked at this site. And to me, it's unfortunate that this wasn't handled in a different way. I think the need for this amendment could have been avoided and should have been avoided. And my feeling is that to come now before us after the fact, in a sense to try and force council's hand, that just sticks in my craw. So I appreciate the comments of my colleagues, but I will support the staff recommendation for that reason. Thank you.
Councillor Fuller.
I also appreciate the comments of my other colleagues. Am I on?
Yep, you are.
Okay. Now, what this picture does not show is the house that's in 16, which if you go back to the page 131, shows the house on 16 and 1 house on 15. Whereas there's actually 2 houses on 15 right now. And those 2 houses were built with the understanding that they would have a common driveway. They built the houses, and now they don't want the common driveway. So this is where I am going to support staff's recommendation. Were 16 and 15 at one time one single lot?
Mr. Chairman, the whole property was subdivided under a comprehensive layout. So at one time it was one large parent parcel many years ago. This is sort of a unique property. It's gone through a couple different subdivisions, one that was subdivided and then dissolved and then re-subdivided into what you see today.
Okay, and I think this is where some of the confusion is, because now we're talking about another subdivision, but that subdivision was not brought to council before.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. The only thing that was ever before council was the original development permit from 2008, which is the image you have in front of you right now.
Which is the two houses with the shared driveway.
That's correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Just a quick comment. Being up there myself as recent, and I believe the independent driveways would enhance the neighborhood as well. And I think some of my colleagues, I respect all the work that goes into this, but in this case, my opinion, also I'd be in support of the independent driveway for each of the residents from what I've seen in this case. But nevertheless, any more speakers on this subject? So can I please call for a vote, please, for motion that council deny any development permit number DP 9893795 Glen Oaks Drive and retain approved permit DP 546. So those all in favor? Those opposed? Motion passed. Oh, motion carries. Okay, no. I, rezoning application number RA 35358-416-434 Wakesaya. Purpose, to present council with a housing agreement for a new 44-bed student housing development at 460 Wakesaya, Nanaimo. Staff, can I have a council? What's your wishes?
Move receive the report.
Moved by Councillor Thorpe, second by Councillor Beswick. Received the report. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Council bylaw motion.
Housing Agreement Bylaw 2016, number 7226 RA 358, to authorize a housing agreement at 416 and 434 Wakesaya Avenue, pass first reading.
All in favor? Or seconder? Second by Councillor Hong. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you.
Move that housing agreement bylaw number 2016, number 7226, pass second reading.
Second by Councillor Hong. All in favor?
Oh, I have a question.
Sorry.
Yeah, can staff advise me on this? I know we don't have a standards of maintenance, but do we ever in these housing agreements try and include a standards of maintenance? Because this is a multiple unit, a number of units with students and things going into it. My concern is, I know it's tough for the standards of maintenance. If we have something like this in an agreement, it might have more ability for us to continue to keep some of the rental unit stock in better shape than it is now. And I would suggest that if we had a standards of maintenance, that little place over by the Harewood Mall wouldn't exist. And that's why I wonder, does staff ever put it, or do we know of any of these housing agreements that have a standards of maintenance built in over the period of time?
Mr. Chairman, certainly that is an option. And in this one, if you look on page 148 in your agenda, there's a schedule that would be negotiated as part of the housing agreement, which we include in their housing standards. So there could be a potential to have a cleaning and maintenance standard included in the details of the housing agreement, yes.
But does that mean that is that interior standards on these ones or exterior too?
It could be both, Mr. Chairman.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Councillor Fuller.
I think I first brought up a minimum standard maintenance bylaw, must be going on almost 20 years ago when I was speaking from the other side. Something I would really like to see included in a lot of these agreements. And, it's something we can work on in the future. I think it's time. And if we are looking at the affordable housing, the stuff for students, I think we really need a minimum standard of maintenance bylaw. So perhaps in the future, I'll definitely support this.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Councillor Brennan.
I'm not sure it's on topic, but I'll test it and you let me know. There is a model bylaw for a standard of maintenance. And so perhaps when this issue has been completed, someone could make a motion for the staff to bring a report back about a standard of maintenance bylaw with reference to the model that was presented.
Sounds like a great idea, but we'll park that and then get back to that. Councillor Pratt.
I totally agree with this. I think all three are correct in this instance, and I would love to see some standards of maintenance attached to these types of buildings. They do take a lot of wear and tear, and it would be prudent to make sure that the buildings remain in good shape. So having something like that would be worthwhile.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt. We're on the second reading there. So all in favor? Passed unanimously. Third.
And the housing agreement, 116-726, passed third reading.
Second. Second by Councillor Pratt. All in favor? Thank you.
May I make that now that we ask staff for a report regarding standards of maintenance, how it could be included in our housing agreements, and the review of authority of council to institute. So if I could have a motion or a motion that staff could do a report. That's what
Thank you, Jim. Councillor Kipp, you got the intent of the motion?
No, it's just a new motion.
It's a new motion.
Oh,
It's a
new motion.
for a report from staff.
Yeah, okay, new motion report. Second by,
Table right now, drop it on the table.
okay, and second by Councillor Bestwick.
Did you get that? Okay.
Just before before I call a vote, Councillor Brennan, sort of the intent of what you were referring to?
Yes, the only problem I have with the motion as stated is that it may be interpreted to include only the housing agreements that we have. And it seems to me the most difficult problems we have are those places where we don't have a housing agreement. I mean, these student housing, we don't have problems with them. They're really well run. They're beautifully built. But it's places that don't have any other backing. And so I would hope.
Not limiting it, yes, I agree with that.
Okay.
Not limiting it.
Thank you, guys. Councillor Thorpe?
Thank you, Chair. That would be my concern as well, that we don't limit this. And I'm just wondering, as we discuss this, how it relates to our current bylaws in terms of unsightly premises. And would we be expanding that bylaw possibly, or is it a totally separate issue? I don't know if staff can answer that off the top of their head, but thank you.
Mr. Chairman, generally they are separate issues, where an unsightly premises would deal with the materials on the land, where a standard of maintenance bylaw could actually deal with the quality of the building itself. So requiring upgrades to a building, for example, if it didn't meet current standards.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller, then we'll call for a vote.
Could you read the motion, please?
The motion, as I understand it, is that staff be directed to prepare a report regarding standards of maintenance related to housing agreements, including a review of the city's authorization to institute the agreement. The authority.
I'm wondering if I could make a friendly amendment to that, because we have standards of, construction and codes, et cetera, but to make it a model for a minimum standard of maintenance, as opposed to just a standard of maintenance, so a minimum standard of maintenance, and that will encompass everything from rooming houses to student housing to single-family dwellings, and it could ultimately take on part of the unsightly premises.
Sure.
Good.
The mover and seconder are fine with that? Okay, sounds good. Councillor Brennan, last speaker on this subject.
Standard of maintenance is something that we've wanted, well, housing advocates have wanted for years and years. What it does is it empowers the city to set a standard, and then if that standard isn't met by the homeowner or the landlord, then the city can go in, make the repairs and those kinds of adjustments, and then bill it back to the owner. Now, those kinds of things are really problematic. That's why we need a report. Councils are very reluctant to exercise that kind of authority. I think the conditions are generally quite extreme when that happens. So I would ask the staff, when they do that report, to review the model that government put together for municipalities, turn of the century. the most recent term, and have a look at that and see if that assists us. But I do fear that the motion as it stands appears to restrict this to housing agreements, and we don't have housing agreements.
All in favor? Thank you. Passed. 8J, liquor license application number LA 120-1890 Boxwood Road.
Chair?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm going to declare a conflict of interest on this one, so I'm going to excuse myself.
Okay, thank you, Jerry.
I do own a liquor license. So you got that noted? Okay, thank you.
Sure.
This is just to.
This is just informed council. Move the receipt. Councillor Kipp, second by Councillor Pratt. All in favor? Oh. Sorry. I didn't peek up. Councillor Bestwick. My first mistake tonight.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions to staff, if I may, please. So there's been no signs posted. There's been no notice to a radius of businesses or otherwise in the area. Is that my understanding?
Mr. Chairman, there's no signs posted and there's no notice as of yet. At this point, we would anticipate this to come forward to the June public hearing. So prior to that, we'll take care of the notification.
So I'm curious that we're getting this information. And is this normal how the process rolls out and folds out for us before we go to a public hearing?
If you compared it to a rezoning application, for example, where a bylaw came forward for first and second reading, we wouldn't normally notify the neighborhood in terms of hand delivery or advertise the public hearing date in the paper until council agreed to give a bylaw first and second reading. Then it would move through the process, the notification would happen. The difference is a rezoning application actually requires on-site signage. It's the only type of application that does OCP and rezoning applications. So liquor licenses, we do not have on-site signage requirements.
So there won't be any signage requirement for this proposed manufacturer's lounge?
No.
And will there be any requirement to notify any neighbors of this by the applicant?
Not by the applicant, but by the city. We would take on the notification requirements, yes. As with comparable would be a development variance permit or a rezoning application where we would mail and hand deliver notices to the neighboring properties.
That's not the responsibility of the applicant?
No, it's a legislative requirement in many cases, notification, so it's done by the municipality to ensure that we're complying with legislation.
And it's a 4-week notice period? Because for us to get into the first opportunity for a public hearing in June.
Yeah, normally with our notification, it's a minimum of 10 days, and some of that has its basis in legislation where some applications you cannot actually notify earlier than that time frame. But for us, it'd be a minimum of 10 days in advance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Where was I? All in favor? Pass. Short attention span at times.
Move council to the information report pertaining to building bylaw 2016 number 7224.
Second by Councillor Bestwick. All in favor? Sorry, I won't do that. Councillor Fuller.
I tried to go through this, and it's pretty extensive what we've got going on here, which I think is great, but I don't know how extensive it is, how it compares with the last one. So might I make the suggestion that if there's anything new in the building bylaw, that it be highlighted? Or if it's changed from before, you might have the before and after in it to make it easier for me to understand what's new in the bylaw. It's just a suggestion, and maybe if I'm the only one that wants it, Mr. Lindsay could get me a copy of it with all those changes. But I think it would be handier for when ourselves and the public are looking at something like this to be able to compare the changes that are being made.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Councillor Bestwick.
I think I would concur with Councillor Fuller's request. And further to that, we can invite Councillor Hong back.
Oh, yeah.
Do we have to?
Sorry, Jared, forgot about you for a minute. All right, all in favor? Thank you.
I move building bylaw to provide administration construction of the city of Nanaimo pass first reading.
Second by Councillor Bestwick. Passed by Councillor Kipp. All in favor? Passed unanimously.
Move the building bylaw 2016, number 7224, pass second reading.
Passed. Second by Councillor Pratt. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you.
Move the building bylaw number 2016, number 7224, pass third reading.
Passed by Councillor Pratt. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. L, bylaw contravention notice 3280 Telescope Terrace. It is requested for council hearing at this time wishing to speak the respected, it is requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to 3280 Telescope Terrace. Please come forward. It is requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to 3280 Telescope Terrace. Please come forward. It is requested that council hear anyone who wish to speak with respect to 3280 Telescope Terrace. Please come forward.
Mr. Chair, I move that council direct the corporate officer to file a bylaw convention notice at the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia under Section 57 of the Community Charter for property located at 3280 Telescope Terrace for construction not completed as per the conditions of the building permit.
Second by Councillor, moved by Councillor Bestwick, second by Councillor Thorpe. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Bylaw contravention notice 2780 Country Club Drive. It is requested that council hear anyone who wish to speak with respect to 2785 Country Club Drive. Please come forward. It is requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to 2785 Country Club Drive. Please come forward. Thirdly, it is requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to 2785 Country Club Drive. Please come forward.
There being none, I would move that council direct the corporate officer to file a bylaw convention notice at the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia under Section 57 of the Community Charter for the property located at 2785 Country Club Drive for construction started without a building permit in contravention of Building Bylaw 2003, number 5693.
Moved by Councillor Bestwick, second by Councillor Thorpe. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Bylaw contravention notice secondary suites. It is requested to hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to the properties listed below. Number 1005 Beverly Drive, 30307 Black Diamond Drive, 331 Black Diamond Drive, 331 Black Diamond Drive, 207 Derby Place, 5393 Dewar Road, 6225 Dover Road, 835 Glengarry Crescent, 1374 Ivy Lane, 286 Catherine Place, 290 Catherine Place, 48 Roberta Road East, 2310/2312 Tower View Crescent. Please come forward. Does anyone speak on any of those listed properties? Please come forward, sir. Sure. Name, please, and.
And I live at 6556 6th Street, and I'm speaking for 2310-2312 Tower View.
Thank you.
So anyway, the pictures will come up in a few minutes. It's been we purchased this property in 2002. That was 14 years ago. Just want to verify it's not a nuisance property. There was one complaint in 1992 and it was inspected at that point. There was 5 students living in the residence, and there was lots of action at that time. I just had a few pictures. They were actually from the building inspector. Thank you. And there were no suites in the residences at that time. Nor are these. I consider these buildings unsafe. In fact, a building permit, it's very rare, I think, for basements to, when they're for the owner to apply for a building permit. In this instance, they actually did, to finish the basements of each side of the duplex. They weren't supposed to have suites, but they were. This particular unit was inspected. All the electrical was checked, and all the plumbing was in at that point. They didn't put in the suite 25 years ago, but they probably did after the inspection. It's been a really interesting exercise for me since it was inspected in January, and we did receive the report in February. And basically, there were 2 recommendations, and it's removal of the suites. Or rezoning, or to rezone application to be made for a duplex with suites. But it basically became obvious very, very quickly that only removal was possible. The staff indicated that the current policy was to pursue removal of suites and duplexes. And I talked to the planning department, I talked to the building inspector, and this was the same message. That actually that's what they intended on doing is to pursue a removal. It was also, there was an agreement that the rezoning possibility was onerous and very expensive, and there was no guarantees from the planning department that even if we attempted to rezone, that it would be accepted. And there was a lot of costs that went along with the application for rezoning. And I was supposed to make a decision by March the 7th to pursue one of the 2 options, which, of course, there was only really one option, and that was removal. There's 4 single parents that reside in the 4 units, and so I was very reluctant to rush into anything because obviously this kind of situation affects people's lives. So I think just as a reminder for people that the green light for duplexes to have suites was approved by City Council in 2013. And it was basically an effort to make this another option for housing, for secondary for housing and less costly housing. So I want to let you know that there has been absolutely no applications that have gone through or been accepted for this process, and I found out why that was. It was almost impossible to actually go through that process. We were directed to go to consult with a code consultant. There are no code consultants here in Nanaimo, nor are there any code consultants here on Vancouver Island, but I was given the name of a couple of code consultants in Vancouver, and I spoke with both of them, and they basically said that neither they concurred with the city's recommendations regarding the intended recommendation was to have a water curtain. Well, I didn't know what a water curtain was, but basically it's a sprinkler system within the duplex in the suites, and it basically to allow for the fire protection that seemed to be required. There was also an upgrading required of the water surface to the how much that would cost. Well, planning department couldn't actually tell me that because they didn't know. So it was very, very difficult and very impossible, or pretty much impossible, to actually proceed with that. So the little bit of research, and I think you probably got a little, the letter that I sent, because I wanted to look into this, because anybody that's worked in social services in Nanaimo and is aware of some of the issues that we have in terms of affordable housing, secondary suites are everywhere, in Nanaimo, of course, and as a social worker, I went into thousands of them, and mainly I didn't knock on the front door of a house. I usually go to the back door because that's where people lived. But it's a very, very important part of our housing inventory. And yet it creates a lot of dilemma for each municipality. And each municipality seems to react to this issue in a different way. And they have the latitude of dealing with the issue in a different way. So they struggle, and Nanaimo struggle too. And actually, Nanaimo has been progressive in some ways to actually accept the idea of having secondary suites. And that was a difficult issue, but they decided to allow that, and that was a progressive issue. The issue with the duplexes, yeah, that was progressive, but it isn't happening. It's not really very possible. The language varies, and I think it's important to recognize that it's not. We have authorized, unauthorized, legal, illegal. There's all sorts of wording, and this happens in every municipality too. It varies dramatically, but I really think it's important to get the wording properly, because a lot of people are really concerned. Nobody wants to break the law. I don't consider myself a criminal. In terms of legal, illegal. These aren't meth labs we're talking about. This is affordable housing for people, and very, very important part of our housing segment. It's crucial to get this down properly, because we can't have healthy people and healthy communities unless we provide affordable housing. So I did speak with Tom Weinreich from the building department, and I talked to him about the code consultant and the information that I received back from the code consultant, and that was on April the 7th. He was going on holiday the next day, but he said that he had taken the initiative, and I really appreciated that, to actually speak with the code consultant that I had spoken with. I'd spoken with a couple, but one of them in Vancouver, and he got the information back and said, gee, we were looking at it a little bit differently before in terms of the duplexes. It doesn't really matter if there's a fire issue. Usually the fire goes up, not across or whatever. I have 3 walls between the downstairs suites. So he thought that it would be important to reconsider that issue and to look at it a little differently than had first been presented, as basically the suites would be the same as would be required in a single residential house. So I asked for a follow-up inspection report, because I needed to have something a little bit different so I could work on that if we were going to go forward with anything. And I only received that report this morning, and I got it in the mail today. And I wasn't as pleased as I was hoping for, because I thought it would give me much more options. But there were 2 options, and the rezoning application had 14 requirements, including the possible need for a hazmat report. And then it had about a year process in terms of applying for the zoning process. It's a very onerous process, a very expensive and very time-consuming process, and I considered it to be a lot more than what's required. The removal of the suites, if we were to pursue that route, that was 10 different units that were mentioned in the removal of suite, including removing wiring and the plumbing, improving wiring and plumbing that was inspected 25 years ago and approved. To make it now so you wouldn't actually have the option. I mean, there was a 220 plug sitting there for the stove 25 years ago. It hasn't changed. Nothing's different. So what am I asking for? And I appreciate you giving me a bit of time here. I guess what happened in March, there was to be a review of the policy with regards to secondary suites. It's a tough issue. The city's dealing with it and weighing the liability and whatever, but it's a tough issue because we need to weigh it in the whole picture of what we can provide for our citizens, as well as covering off the liability of the city and whatever. Now, I have heard, and I'm not sure if it's true, but every municipality deals with it differently, but I have heard that it seems that there's a bit potentially overzealous approach from Nanaimo in terms of this issue. I don't know if every municipality looks through Craigslist and finds out that there might be a suite available and go knocking on the door. We could go into pretty much every older residence, and we have lots of them on the south end of town, and find building infractions. And if you want to say and put that notice on title, go for it, because they're there in every single residence, basically. There's been a lot of stuff that hadn't had building permits attached. So it's become a bit of a bureaucratic nightmare. So I only have a few seconds left, and I appreciate that. So what I'm hoping for is not to force vulnerable people into worse living situations, because that can happen. These are people on limited income. There's people that have kids and or animals, and they struggle to find safe housing. Yard for their kid on a safe street. That's what they're looking for. If you force those people out, they go elsewhere. It's very, very stressful for them, but they have to go elsewhere. And they may be into something that's even less safe, less comfortable for them. I mean, we have walked into many, many places where there's a hot plate here, there's wiring here, on extension cords there, and 5-foot ceilings, and people are living in there because that's what they can find. That's all that's available to them. So I don't personally have any issue. It's been recommended to have a Section 57 on the title. For some people that are really worried about that, they think, oh my God, that's really, really bad. I don't have any issue with that at all. And I think that it's I still have insurance on the place. People can get a mortgage. It's not a problem. And it's a revenue producer for the city to actually have the extra income in terms of the utilities. But what I do worry about is what was said. If you don't get this done by May 2016, May 30th, it'll be referred to bylaws for further enforcement pursuant to Section 72 and 73 of the Community Charter. Bylaw Services has the authority to proceed with statutory requirements to remove the offending unit if required. I've never gotten a clear answer on that. I personally don't have an issue with the Section 57. Other people do. The Section 72, 73, for units that have been there.
Just 2 minutes, Jeff. Sorry to interrupt. I put it just for 2 more minutes.
No, actually, and I've gone more past. I have 10 more seconds.
Okay, yeah.
It's the Section 7. Thank you so much. It's Section 72 and 73 that I would like a clear definition of when and why you would pursue that particular point, because that affects the people that are living in my house. And thank you very much for the extra time. I realize that.
Thank you.
Have any questions?
Yeah, Councillor Fuller.
I have a few questions. First being, is there a time limit on people coming to speak to these items? They're not appearing as a delegation, so why would there be a 10-minute time limit on them, especially if they've got a lot to say? I don't think there is a time limit, is there? Okay, thanks. See, you could have slowed down a little bit there, Mr. Solomon.
Well, thank you, but I appreciate even having that time. Thank you.
Next, you mentioned the cost of rezoning and the cost of removal. How much does it cost to rezone, approximately?
Well, there were so many different issues, like the building consultant. I mean, if you have to go through that, they said, well, it'll be $5,000, but because it's never been done, it'll probably be at least $5,000. But that's just the building consultant. Then there has to be an engineering report. There has to be upgrades, and there's a huge impact to the tenants because I may have to actually leave during the course of a renovation. We're talking so much that it doesn't make it worthwhile for people to do it.
But if you don't have an amount, how can we tell that it's so much it doesn't make?
Well, just the building consultant alone is $10,000.
So more than $10,000.
I mean, that's without all the designs.
Yeah, I agree it's expensive. I totally agree. I was hoping you had some numbers for me. Cost of removal, what's the average cost for that, to remove the suites?
Depends on how much I can do myself. It really bothers me that the city would be going into a residence and saying you have to remove those cupboards. Anybody in their basement and the plugs that are on the wall. There is nothing in a building bylaws or the code to say you can't have plugs in the middle of your wall. In anywhere. You could have them on the ceiling for it. It's just not on the floor. But they would ask you to remove those. And I don't even know if that's legal. How do you do that, right?
Well, you also mentioned that the work that was done was actually done with permits, building permits.
It was permitted 25 years ago.
So all of the work was done.
On one side, on the other side, it was much more rough. But on one side, all that was there.
Okay, so one side was permitted. So why you would have to remove everything that it was permitted to begin with? I mean, if someone gives you a permit to build something, and 25 years down the road, they're coming and taking away that agreement.
Well, they plugged in a stove after, and they put proper counters.
Okay, that I could see, but I'm talking to reduce the costs. It's a huge dilemma. I totally loathe our secondary suite policy, et cetera, et cetera. It was set up to make housing affordable, but in my personal and affordable. Yeah, whatever. Not going to argue with you, Diane. Thank you. So it was set up to make it affordable and safe. I believe yours would be safe. They were permitted, after all, back 25 years ago, the other one might not be.
The other one
But
has even more
regardless,
stuff.
our bylaw has turned into something that has no longer made any of this affordable to the average citizen of Nanaimo, working part-time, minimum wage jobs, especially single parents like you have in your duplex. So we have, like you say, we're moving them into other non-regulated suites because that's all they will be able to afford. Or they may have to go without food or clothing or something else in order to house. I really think we need to revisit this, and I'm hoping that will happen at some point. I keep bringing it up when people bring up the stuff to me. When we talk about removing plumbing, there's houses that are being built nowadays with 4 bathrooms, and that's single family. Why would we require a bathroom be removed from the basement of a house?
You're not, sorry, if I can, it didn't say the bathroom, but it's the plumbing that could be hooked up to a sink.
Well, that too. Sinks happen to come with laundry rooms. So, yeah, it's a horrible situation. I don't know the answer at this time, but I really wish we would take a look at this in the future, and I plan on keep pushing this and pushing it until we do. After the court review, I'm thinking there's a lot of stuff that's going to come forward when staff have the time to do it, and council.
Thank you, Gord. A motion to accept the delegation, please. Moved by, sure, Councillor Pratt. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Solomon. Do you have records of the permitting for that?
Yes, the building inspector gave it to me when he came for the inspection.
Okay. And he said they were inadequate? Is that what transpired?
No, the basements, the permitting was to finish the basements in both of the units. That's side-by-side duplex. And so that's what it was for. And they came and inspected, and, the walls, the plumbing, and the wiring were just inspected. More on one side than the other. The other side wasn't done as much.
So there was no suite in there when the permitting was issued?
It wasn't permitted to have a suite.
Thank you.
It wasn't permitted for that.
Okay, thanks. And so I'm just wondering then, when I hear that, what kind of due diligence did you do when you purchased the duplex to assure yourself that the suites were authorized?
We purchased it. It didn't even come up in terms of the issue. I mean, it wasn't even mentioned. I've owned other rentals, and it actually did pop up as.
But you yourself didn't ask about those things.
No, it didn't come up in the search even either. Yeah.
So nothing would come up on the search, I guess.
Yeah, it was on record.
What would come up on the search, I guess, is if they were authorized, that would show.
But there wasn't any possibility. Nobody would have come forward. Suites and duplexes wasn't considered. The previous owner, 20 years ago, didn't actually ask, because they would have said, well, you can't have suites, which is up until 2013. They would have said the same thing. You can't have suites. They're even saying that now.
So you weren't surprised then to know that?
No, because to me, I'm actually very, very glad to actually be able to provide affordable housing for people. So, and they were clean, good houses. So,
sure.
Yeah. So it isn't something that I want to hide from. I actually want more of that stuff.
Yeah, I get that. So then I have some questions for Dale.
You have no more questions for the delegation. Do the other two speakers, Mr. Kipp and Councillor Kipp and Councillor Bestwick, have any questions for the delegation?
Mine was more of a point to what he was saying about the authorization.
Go ahead.
Typically, in the days when those houses were designed, the basements were unfinished. It was just framing in the basements, and there was typically plumbing put in for a sink, a kitchen, everything put into them. They were designed that way a long time ago, long before suites were legal or considered legal, and that's what the plan was accepted, and usually it said on the plan, unfinished basement. But it showed the plumbing, the toilet lines, the dotted lines for all the finishing. So a lot of them were designed a long time ago for a secondary suite, and people just thought putting in affordable housing. So that's where he says it was authorized. The plumbing was in there, probably marked in the plans, original plans, and they were done.
Thank you, Councillor Kipp. Councillor Bestwick?
My question is to staff.
Thank you. Thank you. Move to receive the delegation. Seconded? Okay. Councillor Kipp and Councillor Thorpe, all in favor?
Oh, to receive the delegation?
Receive the delegation.
Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know whether I had to do that with that particular, but it doesn't matter. Now, both, okay, so Councillor Bestwick, do you have a question for staff?
I do. Mr. Lindsay, the last delegation, or the only delegation, made reference to Section 72 and 73. And while he noted that he's not concerned about 57, which is, he said is fine, but 72 and 73 at the city's discretion and can come in at any time, is the way that I understand this to mean. So does this this property, and I guess every property, but others that are facing this same situation, I'm sure they're not all identical or the same. They're the same but different. What protection does Mr. Solomon have that 72 and 73 won't be exercised, or if they are, he'll have ample opportunity to address it before we go in and do anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a good question, and just to reemphasize, tonight we're not here for Section 72, 73. We're just for a simple, just a notice on title at this point. So just in general terms, the process would be any of the applications which remain illegal are given every opportunity to come in and try to be authorized. So all these existing suites in homes. So the normal process is we work with them to make a building permit application and authorize. If we come to, after a meeting like tonight, where a notice is put on title and we're unable to get those property owners to come forward and make application, those files are referred to the bylaw department for enforcement. If at the end of that process the bylaw department's unable to get them to come in and comply and obtain a building permit, then ultimately those will show up on a future council agenda seeking council's direction for a removal notice. Prior to that evening, we would notify the property owner well in advance, and they'd have the opportunity to come and speak to council. Ultimately, the decision for a removal, remedial action removal order would come and be council's decision.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is for Mr. Lindsay as well. What happens? What drags something out of simple 57 and into the 70s? There are some times when Section 57 is put on and the building inspector confirms that they don't have any life safety concerns. Now, do people have to apply for a building permit to get that assessment?
So a normal process would be that we become aware of a suite. So an inspection is done to first confirm there is a suite present. Then there's a determination made, did that suite exist prior to 2005 or not? Mm-hmm. So under this scenario, let's assume that it did. They were able to conclude that it did exist prior to 2005. They're given a report of the life safety upgrades that are required, and the request at that time is for them to make a building permit application. So if they make a building permit application, in keeping with council's policy, we put a notice on title because there's going to be some elements of that suite that we were not there or present to inspect. We make sure the life safety issues are addressed, the permit's issued, the notice is on title, it's considered an authorized suite. That's probably the best case scenario. We've addressed the life safety issues, the suite can remain. If for whatever reason the owner determines that they're not willing or able to do the upgrades, that they're too costly or they're simply not prepared to do them, we would then ask them to remove the suite, and we would confirm the suite's been removed. We would close the file. If they do neither one of those, if they don't do the upgrades or if they don't have the suite removed, that's when it ultimately ends up in front of council, seeking council's direction to give the removal order. And that scenario, I got to be clear, the scenario I'm talking about there is where we deal with 99.9% of our applications, and that's a suite in a single-family home. The delegation tonight was speaking to you a slightly different scenario of suites in duplexes, which is a little more recent than council's policy has been developed by that on that issue. And as the delegation mentioned, we have yet to see one formal submission for a rezoning application at this time.
Yeah. Our primary concern is life safety issues, and if those are managed, then we're okay. And they don't necessarily end up costing thousands and thousands of dollars. We don't know if they're prohibitive in this case, in any case.
Mr. Chairman, the cost can vary from file to file. Sometimes the cost can be very low. If we go into a suite, for example, that has no windows in the bedroom and it's all completely below grade, the cost can be more substantial to upgrade. If we go into one where there's already a separate heating system, it's taken care of. If it's all an open one heating system through the entire house, there can be a cost that some of them are below minimum height requirements. Of course, that's more costly. So it really varies from file to file.
So safety is our primary concern when we're reviewing these, and the safety of citizens, and particularly those who have to live in suites in houses. We want to make sure that where they're living is safe.
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Hong?
Thank you. Through you to staff. Dale, I just got a couple of questions. I wanted to verify and clarify the section 57. I've noticed some of them are authorized suites and some of them are illegal secondary suites. So, for example, number 5 and 6 on Dewar Road and Dover Road. When those illegal suites say that they want to authorize them, does that come back to us again for another 57, section 57 to say that now they are authorized? So why are we getting authorized and illegal in the same bunch?
Yeah, in the purposes of this report, authorized and illegal, the only difference is an authorized suite, we're just highlighting those files that have made the building permit application. They've done the commitments to deal with the life safety issues. The properties that are identified as being illegal at this time, they just have not taken that step at this point. We do not know whether they're going to proceed down the path of being authorized or ultimately will they be removed.
Okay, so if number 5, Dewar Road, comes back and authorized, and so they do the work, so now do they come back to us and now this changes to authorize a secondary suite?
No,
are we going to see it again, or
you would not see it again? So if one of those property owners that are currently identified as being illegal decided tomorrow to come in and obtain a building permit, we would work with them. If the life safety issues were addressed, the notice is on title, file would be closed. It would then be considered an authorized suite.
Okay, so but you guys would do that in the back end and convert it to
would not
authorized.
would not return to council.
Okay, because it's just, for clarification for me, like how many of these illegal secondary streets that we approve ever become authorized, right? It was just a number that we will never get to see.
I don't have a detailed number for you, but I think I was asked this question possibly by Councillor Fuller in the past. And when staff did a quick review of current files, the feeling was it was approximately, I believe the number was 80%. I stand to be corrected, but 80% of the files actually went through and were authorized, the remaining 20% with removal of the suite. But I would caution that was just based on a very preliminary review of the files.
Okay, so then is those 20% that are going to come back to us for the section 72 and 73, is that right?
Possibly, Mr. Chairman. If the property owner elects on their own to remove the suite, they would not come back before council. They would remove the suite. The building inspector would attend the site. They confirm the suite was gone. The portion that would come back before council are the ones who do not submit a building permit and address life safety and also do not remove the suite.
Okay, thank you. And now on to this one. I guess The duplex, when I see that we have one on Portsmouth as the next one that we're going to put on section 72 and 73 here in the next agenda item. With regards to the rezoning that we discussed, from a duplex with a suite, so that's 4 units, that would be a fourplex, right? That would be rezoned. What density then? Difference from a duplex? It would be medium density?
I would hesitate to put it in a category of density. What I would say is when we brought forward that policy, we said when we had the first application made, we would actually create a zone. So I think the point I would make is it's different. A duplex with suites in our mind is different. Council told us it was different when they adopted the policy than a fourplex per se, which could be stratified. A duplex with suites would not be stratified, for example. There's a number of building code life safety conditions which are different between the two.
So would they have to come to us for a threeplex? Same, would we have to rezone a duplex to a threeplex? Is that more difficult?
As of right now, the majority of homes, single-family homes in the city, can have secondary suites. Just as of right, you don't need to apply for rezoning. If you have a zoning that allows for a duplex and you want to add additional units, whether it's 1 or 2, you need to rezone that property.
I'm just going to intervene quickly, Council, if we may stick to the 12 properties that are on the agenda for this moment. Thank you. Sorry to be rude. But thanks. Councillor Fuller.
Hoping to make a correction here because this is where what I say, this is a complicated issue. Now, I just heard it said that once a building permit is put on to fix up the secondary suite, we won't be seeing it again. That's wrong. Because the building permit has a certain amount of time to it to be done. And then they'll come in and inspect. And if it hasn't been done, then it will come back for a Section 72. I've seen this on the agenda before where properties have had building permits and about a year or so later, because they never followed through with it, those properties are now coming up for the Section 72, etc.
That's a valid point. I think the majority, what I would say though, is the majority of time when people make building permit applications, they normally follow through with their intent, but there are examples, and I think there's some on your agenda tonight where that very issue happened, where somebody's taken out a permit but never met the requirements.
Yeah, sort of like development permits. You know, you have full intention of doing it, but you just don't do it right away. And I'm certainly glad we are so concerned with safety in these issues, because we would have had a minimum standard of maintenance bylaw years ago if we were that concerned. That's my personal opinion. I'm all for safety. And had we had a minimum standard of maintenance bylaw, that would have encompassed all of the secondary suites out there right now, all of your single-family dwellings, rooming houses, etc. And some of the slumlords have some horrible places where a minimum standard of maintenance would make those houses safe for people. So how well do we really regard safety? I want to see safety.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. At this point, I'm going to state back to where we are. Is it requested that Council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to properties listed below, as previously mentioned, from 1 to 12? Ms. Smith, at this point, I don't got to read them out all 12 again, do I? I did it on the first time. Okay, thank you. At this time, thirdly, is a request that Council hear and anyone wishing to speak with respect to the properties listed below, as I stated earlier, from 1 to 12. Thank you. Not seeing no one come forward after three attempts.
I'd move that Council direct the corporate officer to file a bylaw convention notice at the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia under Section 57 of the Community Charter for the following properties, as listed on page 6, 1 through 12. It's not necessary to read each address out. Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Any? I think we've had quite a great conversation. So all in favor? Any opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Good conversation. Just what demonstrated from that conversation, as Councillor Fuller mentioned, is after core review, we got to put some time because we do have a considerable amount of conversation on the secondary suites and housing. Thank you, Gord, for bringing that up.
I wonder if I could just say something.
Yes,
about that.
of course.
Just to staff, we have these conversations every time we have secondary suites come before us, and I think it is important for us to get a better understanding. I think it's quite instructive for the public to hear the conversation, but I really believe that council could probably use some help in terms of really wrapping their heads around all of the pieces of it. It is quite complex, and if we had some kind of an information session, it might be really helpful to us in terms of maybe not having to go through this every time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. Mr. Solomon brought up a lot of points. I just want to mention that I've heard from a few people, they find the process very daunting, very intimidating, actually, when they come in and people walk into their house and they say, you have to tear this out, you have to do that. So it might be an idea, like Councillor Pratt said, to have a bit of a review of it and see if there's any new legislation that's come out. Yeah, we've fought over this one for 20 years. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kipp. Well, Councillor Fuller.
Totally agree with Councillor Pratt and Councillor Kipp, and I would love to potentially see some comparisons with some other communities. We're always comparing ourselves to other communities, so perhaps we could look at what other communities are doing, because I don't think some communities have the extensive criteria that we do. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to remind Council that we have an existing motion from Council to review the secondary suite regulations, and I think that was made maybe a month ago, approximately. So that is on staff's work plan, and we'll be bringing that forward for your consideration.
Thank you, Dale. We look forward to that. Advisory Committee Commission minutes. Moved by Councillor Hong, second by Councillor Pratt. All in favor? Passed. Thank you. 9, Community Services. 9C, Unauthorized Suites, 6620 Portsmouth Road. It is requested that Council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to 6620 Portsmouth Road. Please come forward. Name and address, please, sir.
Hi, my name's Bo Best, and the address is 6626 Portsmouth Road.
Thank you.
I'm speaking on behalf of my mother as well. Sorry, I'm pretty new to this, so. What had happened is we've owned the building since 2000, and we've lived there since 2002. And a few months ago, I guess a complaint was filed against us, and it was followed up through the city, and somebody came by and wanted to have a look at it, and they said it was an illegal fourplex, and it was actually a duplex. But when we purchased it, we had all the paperwork, including a clip that showed it as being sold as a fourplex, and all the building inspection forms and everything also state that there's 4 units in it. And I also have a map of the city, and it shows on the map that it has 4 addresses on it, and the duplexes beside it have 2 addresses. So also another thing is I think possibly a mistake has been made because it was built in 1974, and in 1978 Lantzville changed to the regional district of Nanaimo. And during that time, they lost all the literature and plans and everything that went along with the building. When we asked for that information, they were unable to give it to us because of that reason. With that being said, it has 4 addresses, and when we brought that point up, they said it was because it has 4 P.O. boxes on the mailboxes for each separate unit. And when that was brought up to the city, they said, well, we could just go down to the post office and that could be obtained, but that's not possible, they said. For us to do that, that it has to have an actual address to go with the actual box. Yeah, and it has 4 of everything, 4 washer and dryer hookups. It's got 4 built-in fire alarm systems for each unit. For the past 16 years, we've been paying insurance on 4 units. Yeah, it's just, I've been in construction my whole life too, and I don't see how that it could be a duplex. It's just, I mean, it would be a 5-bedroom, 2 living room, 2 bathroom unit. It just doesn't seem to work at all. I think, something went wrong on the end, on the city's end. So I just wanted to come here and see if we could, maybe move to get it rezoned so we can make it a multi-unit lot or whatnot. And the city also said that they would like to densify the area to support zoning for multi-units like that. So maybe that's something that could be dealt with there too. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Member councils will have a few questions for you. If you may just wait, please. Councillor Fuller.
You mentioned Lantzville losing the records. Was this property at one point in Lantzville?
Pardon me, sorry.
Was the property in Lantzville? Why would they have the records?
Because in Lantzville, it wasn't part of the city of Nanaimo.
Okay.
During that time, they had their own separate entity,
Yeah,
like Cedar and whatnot.
which they still do.
Yeah, well.
But that part of Lantzville was amalgamated into Nanaimo?
Yes, that's correct, because it's closer to Dickinson and
Okay.
Woodgrove Chrysler in that area, so it's not really considered Lantzville.
And so in 1975, it was built as a fourplex.
Yes,
in
that's
Lantzville.
correct. In 1974, it was built as a
74
fourplex.
it was built as a fourplex in Lantzville. Okay, thanks. This is a weird one.
Good for now, Councillor Fuller?
I'm good, yeah.
Councillor Pratt?
Have you spoken to the people at the city about this?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and they're saying it is a duplex, not a fourplex.
That's correct.
All right.
And when we've asked for, just a little bit more information on it, they claim they don't have any. They don't have any plans of the building on record or anything like that whatsoever to claim otherwise. So it just seems weird, is all.
Okay, I have questions for staff, but I don't have any more questions for the delegation.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Just if I can get my dates correct. So in 2002, you moved in?
Yes, we purchased it in 2000 and 2002. My mother moved in there, and she's lived there ever since.
And when your mom moved in, there was 4 units.
Yes. Yeah,
and your
when it
mom
was
lived in
purchased,
one of the 4 units in 2002 till now?
Yes.
And so you have 3 tenants?
Yes.
And you mentioned that you have 4 separate, is there 4 separate water meters? Is there 4 separate?
There's 4 separate bathrooms. There's 4 separate washer and dryer hookups. There's 4 separate everything.
Did you make any of those installations post 2002, since 2000?
No, it's all been original right from the purchase time at 2000 with inspection reports on all 4 units and everything.
Thank you. And you mentioned you have a clip on, is that just a...
Oh, the city map?
You mentioned in your preamble that you had a clip of information, I guess it would be, of when you purchased?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, excuse me here.
That's all right. Take your time.
Yeah, the insurance form from 1974, excuse me. Oh, the news clip, yes. Okay. Yes, the news clip right here stating that it's a fourplex when it was posted in the newspaper for sale when we purchased it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, it shows it here. North Nanaimo Revenue fourplex.
All right.
When we bought it, it was everybody, the salesman, the real estate agent, everybody told us it was all a fourplex, and that's how it's always been and always was.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions for the delegate, council? Not seeing that. Thank you for your presentation, sir.
Okay.
It's the first time you did great. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Pratt?
So questions to staff on this then. First one I'd like to clear up is the issue around it being in Lance'ville. I wonder if you could confirm that that was the case, or?
Mr. Chairman, what I could confirm that is prior to amalgamation, it would have been outside of the city of Nanaimo proper at the time, whether it was in what was referred to as maybe the Lanceville Improvement District. I'm not exactly sure, but not Lanceville proper as we know it today. No.
Okay. So do you have any comments on the presenter's understanding that it was a fourplex when they bought it?
Mr. Chairman, I'll admit I'm somewhat confused by the comments because we have a letter from the delegation's solicitor who recognizes that it was built in 1975 as a duplex and then it was converted some point after 1975 without zoning or without permit to a fourplex. So.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, can I just add something real quick?
Okay.
Yeah. Councillor Kipp, sorry?
From the owner of what this letter is?
Absolutely. Yes. Please come up, sir.
Yeah, just on the city plan here, it shows that there's 4 addresses on here. If it was duplex ones, it would be 2.
May I ask about your lawyer letter? The letter saying it's a duplex? You aware of that?
No, I am not. Sorry, what was that?
Well, the staff says that they have a letter in possession from a lawyer stating it's a duplex.
Yeah, well, I'm Deb Marshall and I'm the owner of the property. Well, initially, like when this all started, I wasn't kind of worried about it because I, like, since day one, I thought it that way and I made a look into this and everything seemed right to me. I still feel it wasn't because of the switch and the change and the 4 separate addresses.
Oh, so what you're saying is the information that the lawyer got as part of the city was that it was the information the city has is that it was a duplex.
They should be talking to the staff about this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so the information the lawyer got from the city was that it was a duplex, so
Yeah.
that's the city still saying it's a duplex.
And then the recommendation of the lawyer was to comply with the space. But I'm just a single person. I have been the whole entire time I've owned this property. And all my tenants are like been there for 10 years. I do all the different characters that have built-in restaurants. There's nothing wrong. I live there. There's never been trouble. I maintain it. And so
It's just, you know, if rezoning is a possibility, that would be great because it's just for us right now to bring it back to a duplex and get rid of the tenants and stuff. That's part of the revenue. It's just something that's just not possible, you know. Like that's pretty much her whole source of income, right?
well, no, I work full time, and that's the thing is I don't charge people probably what they should be getting charged for that building because I emphasize with them because there's students, there's people that are just low income, but they've been there a long time and they can live in my building because of that reason. And if it was a 5-bedroom, 2-living-room apartment, I would probably get a bunch of people from college having parties all the time. Oops. So, it seems really dumb, and like with all the lawyer stuff, I agree to the city that I would sell it if the zoning got changed, so it would be more profitable to somebody else to densify the area, or else I would find somebody to help me develop. So I agreed to, to disrupt. I feel like I'm a rock in a hard place. I don't really know, what to do. I thought I was doing a good, right thing by my I love. I don't know.
Okay.
It's just upsetting. Like I said, I have been a single parent for the last 16 years. Taking care of everything and do all the maintenance. Well, some things I can't do, but, you know, it's. I do.
Okay. So I'm just going to intervene here. Thank you. And Councillor Kipp, is that good for now? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt? No worries. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm given to understand now that there are deficiencies in the 2 suites. Is that correct? Or is it just that because it's actually a duplex and these suites weren't authorized?
Mr. Chairman, so there was deficiencies identified in the suites. The problem being we can't issue a permit to rectify it because at this time it's zoned for duplex. So we can't issue the permit. So what the applicants have been clearly told, and going back to at least the middle of last year, is that one way to pursue this or rectify this would be to make a rezoning application. And I have records back to at least September of last year where that discussion was occurring. There's been no application made to date.
Okay.
Good for now.
Yep.
Councillor Hong?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to staff. This whole area is being redeveloped and rezoned. I think we've just passed sixplex, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of houses down. I know Gurr sitting right there has done a whole bunch of smaller residential houses on the same size lot. So, I think we had this discussion of waiting for landowners to redevelop in hopes of getting the laneway. So we have one potential property right here if they're interested in redeveloping. The city is very favorable of having this area redeveloped, and for you to come to rezone even to build a proper fourplex or whatever, I think that the staff recommendation has been to rezone that as a core 3 area. Is it core 3? Is that correct, Mr. Lindsay?
I'm sorry.
The OCP's...
Chairman, I don't have the designation from me. It's corridor designated under the OCP, yes.
So high density is acceptable in this area. So I recommend that the applicants come forward and think about rezoning this, because I think it is a favorable location, and we've approved a whole whackload of them here. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hong. Councillor Bestwick?
Thank you for your presentation. I find this really confusing on Portsmouth, given the fact that, to Councillor Hong's point, is that we've been requested to put higher density in the corridors zone or roads, et cetera, of which Portsmouth is one. And at almost every meeting, we're being asked to do something on Portsmouth or some other corridor 12 or corridor whatever that has that catches everything. You can almost do anything on them. I find it confusing that since 1974-75, this has been a fourplex. We inherited the property, which was clearly conforming, must have been conforming in 74-75. And the issue now is it has deficiencies because it's zoned duplex. Although it's been a fourplex since it was built, because there's been no repairs done since they purchased it in 2000. And they purchased it with the advertisement as a fourplex with 4 different hookups for everything and 4 different addresses, whereby if I take the delegation at their word that, well, they went and got 4 post boxes, that anybody can do that apparently. So I find it that there's no grandfathering, that there's no, we would love somebody to come and put a fourplex there, or an 8-plex, or a 6-plex. So I'm confused that for 40 years, when this was on the market and was being lived in a different jurisdiction, Lantzville, our neighbor, amalgamation happens, we inherit it, we've been charging them for a fourplex, and now we're telling them it's a duplex? And I assume take a unit out of each side or get rezoned or do something when for 40 plus years it's been a fourplex. I'm as confused as they would be if I had to come to the counter and try to figure that out.
So a few points in there, Mr. Chairman. I think the first is the grandfathering option. If we had some evidence that the property was ever zoned for fourplex, then the unit, if it would have obtained a building permit at that time for a fourplex, it would be what is termed grandfathered. We have no such record of that. Our records are in 1975. It was a duplex, and at some time after amalgamation, in the 75 to 79, it was converted from a duplex to a fourplex. We have no permits issuing that conversion, and the zoning has never allowed for that and continues not to allow for that today. So the two options available for the situation are either remove the units or apply for a rezoning application to legalize it. At this point, we have not received a rezoning application, so we're left with no other option than to come before council and seek removal.
I'll just say again, I don't know what happened between whatever 75 and 79 or where the paperwork is or isn't, but since day one, it's been a fourplex. And corridor zoning, we can do pretty much anything in corridor zoning, and I think that there's a delegation here tonight that wants to do a sixplex or an eightplex on the same street, and we can't do a fourplex?
Sorry, I should clarify. It's designated corridor under the official community plan, but it's not zoned as corridor zoning. It's still zoned. It's zoned for R4 duplex zoning. So they need to apply for rezoning. You're quite right. The official community plan supports densification and supports in principle rezoning of these properties, but we do not have a rezoning application that would legalize this use. If we had one, we would bring it forward for councils for your consideration.
Okay, I'm sorry to belabor this at this time of evening, but if it was a duplex or if it was a piece of property that we're trying to turn into a fourplex, we'd probably do it. It's a fourplex that's been there for 45 years. And they were saying, sorry, you have to take out 2 units. But if you were 2 units, wanted to add to this and make it 4, we'd support you. That's what I'm hearing.
I think that's the point, Mr. Chairman, is nobody's made that application.
How much does it cost to make that application to go from a duplex to a fourplex? What's the cost?
The basic application fees would be somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500.
And then that's the application. Now, what other costs are triggered?
The more substantial cost, Mr. Chairman, would be if there are life safety upgrades that are required to those units. And I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head what those are, but assuming there are upgrades that are required, it would likely be the majority of the expenditure would be on the building code upgrades, not on the application fees.
Thank you.
Councillor Kipp?
Can staff tell me when this was zoned duplex? When was this duplex zone put on this property?
You're testing my zoning memory here, but I believe in 1993, the bylaw at that time allowed duplexes pretty much throughout the community, and in the adoption of the zoning bylaw 4000 in 1993 created duplex zoning. So I believe it would date back to that
Lots
time.
of 12,000 square feet or bigger they were, I think it was at that point.
You were allowed duplexes, yes.
Yeah, duplex. See, my concern with this is it's under amalgamation. There is probably something on microfiche somewhere. People just might not want to dig through the microfiche. It is time consuming in that. From my perspective, I'd like to have this one pulled for now and have a bit more information, see if staff can obtain or if the owners can actually try and obtain more information on when this was built. This one to me is it's with the 4 addresses, the way the people have talked about it, and typically we always say, oh, well, it's up to you to check out everything that the city does. Well, we've changed a whole bunch of rules in between 1975 and now. We've changed a lot of rules that people don't know about. So from my perspective, I wish there was a way we could pull this or defer anything on it, because I'd like more information about when this was built, if it was a fourplex or if it's been a fourplex. I mean, obviously, I think staff said just shortly after amalgamation or sometime, so the cabinets and things like that must be from the 70s or the 80s. I mean, if they do look like they're really new put in and they're that good, then they should get a Heritage Award for recreating those cabinets, right? They get a nice award for that. So from my perspective, I think this is a very confusing one. One of the most confusing I've heard in my time here, for one, with the 4 addresses is a concern. Can staff tell me if how many electrical meters are in the building? Does anyone know? 2. There's 2. That's an indicator. That's a tough one for me, because typically a 4-plex you'd put in 4. That's a tough one. So I would like more information, though. It seems like it's been a long time. 1975, a building. When I see the picture of it, it looks like one of those old kind of 4-plex duplexes with the big basement and thing in it, and the big square flat roof and things. So I think I'd like to defer this one for a decision to find out more information. Is there a
Mr. Lindsay, can we go call
Mr. Chairman, if that's the wish of council, we could bring back a report. What I would say, though, is that staff did a thorough review of the microfiche. We shared all that information with the applicant's solicitor. The staff's opinion that the building was built as a duplex, that it was zoned as a duplex, and the applicant's lawyer agreed with staff's interpretation based on the historical information we were able to provide him from the microfiche system.
Why are the 4 addresses on our map? Can I ask that? That's a recognition to me.
I would have to review at that time when those addresses came into place. Much like user rates, even if a property is illegal, we will at some time, we will always still charge user rates. So they may have had a council policy at the time to provide addresses. I'm not sure. I'd have to review that specific question.
Thank you.
So, Councillor Kipp, are you making a recommendation?
I'd like to defer this one to a further meeting to find out more information, even for myself to dig into. So I'd request a motion to defer this one.
Do we have a seconder for Jim's recommendation? Second by Councillor Fuller. All in favor? Passed unanimous. Thank you.
So a motion on 96 Princess?
No, it's pulled.
That's
pulled. Pulled? Oh, okay. So
when's
the bathroom?
9C Portsmouth is deferred. 9D Property Maintenance Bylaw 1990 number 3704. It is requested the council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to property maintenance for the properties listed below: 550 Brecken Road, 195 Princess Street, 3796 Victoria Avenue, 3221 Hammond Bay Road. Please come forward. Just name and address, please, for the record, sir.
George Mackay, 3221 Hammond Bay.
Thank you.
Carry on? Okay.
Yes, please, sir.
I've been there about 35 years, and I accumulated a lot of things in that time. And I had a kind of a medical issue, so right now the clock is ticking, so I am getting rid of the stuff. And my truck I was using kind of broke down, which is almost not a sign. And that's running now, so hopefully get all the stuff gone. Most stuff, I need about another month or something like that. What it?
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, sir. Are you asking for an extension?
Pardon? Yes.
And how much time do you need?
About a month.
So if you come back to us in 60 days from now, like 30 days, we give you an additional 30 days if you come.
So mostly it'll be all gone, yeah.
So you believe that you can?
Yeah. I was going to do it. I took one load actually out to Cassidy, and then I took a small load to recycling, and I was going down the road, and also my brakes kind of didn't work. I made it home, so I had to redo the brakes. And of course, after I did the brakes, I dropped it was right behind the fuel tank, so I had to drop the fuel tank, and consequently, a new fuel pump and a new fuel tank.
So if we give you 30 more days, will you be compliant?
Pardon?
If we provide you 30 more days, will you be compliant in 30 days?
Oh, yeah, I should be getting most of it, yeah.
Because if you realize if you've come before us, I appreciate that. I think we all appreciate that when people come in front of us. So you've done that, so I appreciate it. If this
Oh,
council...
yeah, I mean, I was going to do it anyhow, but I had, like I said, a medical issue.
Yeah, so if we give you 30 days, you will be compliant.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
the next time, if you come before us, you probably will not be as fortunate if you are not compliant. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Is it requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak to the respect to the property maintenance for the properties listed below as previously mentioned? Please come forward.
Hi, I'm Terry Rager. I'd like to speak to 339 Watfield. How's it? Oh, that's no good. Can we go back? It's just that it has been pulled. Okay, good. Thank you. Missed that. Thanks.
It is requested for the third and final time that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to the property maintenance for the properties listed below. Please come forward, as previously mentioned.
There being none, I would so move that council pursuant to property maintenance bylaw 1990-3704 direct the owners of the following properties to remove the materials as listed below from the premises within 14 days, or the work will be done by the city or its agents at the owner's cost. That would be items 2, 3, and 4, and provide item 5 with 30 days. And the other people are being provided 14 days. We'll provide them 30 days.
Second.
All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Bylaws.
Move Beaufort Park dedication removal disposal bylaw 2016 number 7225. Choosing park dedication and authorized disposal of a portion of Beaufort Park be adopted. Second.
Second by Councillor Thorpe. All in favor? Passed unanimously.
Move the financial plan amendment bylaw 2016 number 7222.01 to amend the 2016-2020 financial plan be adopted.
Second by Councillor Beswick. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you.
Move the property tax rates bylaw 2016 number 7230 to fix the tax rates upon real property in the city of Nanaimo to provide for the payment of taxes for the year 2016 be adopted.
Second by Councillor Beswick. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you.
The regional park and trail parcel tax bylaw 2015 number 7228 to provide officers to collect parcel tax be adopted.
Second by Councillor Hong. All in favor?
Opposed.
Councillor Kip opposes.
And Fuller.
And Fuller opposes. Yeah. Sure. No, we'll have a speaker on this. Councillor Beswick.
This is for 1 year only. Thank you. Thank you. I'm in favor. I apologize.
Yeah.
I should've-
Yeah.
get that
2
out.
opposed. Remainder in favor. Thank you. Thank you for reading motions, Councillor Kip. Bylaw status sheets. Any other business? 14A down to 14A. At this time, Councillor Beswick, Council Travel Conference Funds. Councillor Beswick made a notice of motion a couple weeks ago, I believe. Councillor Beswick.
Thank you. It's a 3-part motion, and I would so read, and if people wish to do them seriatim or not at all, but that council, number 1, approve and allocate up to $1,000 for each member of council for travel, hospitality, and conference activities directly related to the city business and the office of a council member. 2, direct that council members must deliver a report on their activities to council as soon as practicable. And 3, approve and allocate up to $3,000 for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Annual Conference, $2,500 for the Union of British Columbia Municipalities Annual Conference, and $1,000 for the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities Annual Conference for each approved member of council to attend these conferences.
Do I have a seconder for discussion? Second by Councillor Kip. Councillor Pratt.
Thank you. I have no problem with number 2 and 3 of the motion, but I do have a problem with the first part, and that is, I'm not sure why we're trying to put a cap on it. I don't think anybody on this council is abusing the education allowance. I certainly know that I have really, really appreciated the ability to be able to attend conferences that I think will help me as a counselor. I don't treat this as something frivolous. I don't particularly enjoy going away for 3 days. When there's many other things I could be doing, but I really do believe when I go away that it is because I believe it is going to further the work that I'm doing here for the city, and I take that very seriously. And so I'm wondering why we're all of a sudden feeling the need to put a cap on this, and I'm not in favor of number 1. And I guess I would have to vote against the entire thing if number 1 stayed there.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarification, we have a policy that we can also request council. Is this on the outside of it? Is this $1,000, or is this the $1,000 that we as council has our own discretion allowed to use before we come before council requesting funds for travel for other conferences beyond this amount?
Victor, please. Thank you.
So in this case, anything outside that $1,000 would have to come through for a resolution.
Okay, so their option is still available for us to go. This is the $1,000 for our discretion only.
Correct.
Thank you.
Ms. Smith.
Sorry to interrupt the debate. I was just going to make the suggestion perhaps to add another part to this motion to include these items in the council spending and amenities policy. Might make sense to have it in there. Just a suggestion.
The mover and seconder, to do a comment on that comment or defer that comment for, I'm not sure where to go with that comment. So I put it out to you two.
I think it's appropriate that it would end up in that allocation, yes. I think it's a good suggestion.
Councillor Kipp, as a seconder, are you on that? Thank you, Ms. Smith, for the wisdom. Councillor Fuller.
If it's moved into the procedure bylaw, is it in the procedure bylaw where it mentions that other conferences would come to council for approval?
That's in the recently approved council spending and amenities policy.
Okay. Is that where this is going, into that? Okay, thanks. I was just getting late here, a bit confused. So now that I know that is in there for sure, I would certainly approve this because it definitely will allow, if someone wants to take that extra conference to come to council and get it approved by council.
Yeah. Councillor Beswick.
Thank you. Currently, we have in our council spending and amenities policy, if I'm not mistaken, and please correct me, we have essentially a first come, first served basis. There's a pool of, when I say a pool, there's an allocation of funds there for members of council to attend events, and then they come and make a request. So if you wish to attend an event in Courtenay because you felt it fit within your purview and a good event to attend for whatever the reason is to further the knowledge, interest, business of the city, you could come and ask for permission. Is that correct?
That's correct. So what you have now is a pool system. What this tries to do is to provide you with a framework where, if you remember in the amenities policy, we will be reporting back to council at the end of each quarter what your spending has been like. So it becomes a little bit easy because now you have a reference point where you say, I have $1,000, I have spent 200. So it helps you with planning everything else that's coming. And that's the whole point. And then the other point I would like to make is looking at just the first point. It's a very generous allocation because you're not even hitting half of that as we speak, as individuals.
I think that's a very important point because what it does is, A, it caps each of us, and it's not mandatory that we spend any amount of that $1,000. So it gives you the opportunity to, if you so choose. You don't have to spend any, and you don't have to go to the FCM, and you don't have to go to the UBCM. And if the UBCM is in Victoria, you may be not spending anywhere near $2,500 because you might drive back and forth 3 days in a row. So for me, it's a scorecard essentially. And if somebody came to and said, you know what, I'm going to go over my $1,000. Does anybody have an objection? I would like to go to this next thing over here on the sign bylaw event in Richmond. I don't think anybody on our council is going to say, you're going to be $1,116.43. Sorry, over your limit. I don't think that we're going to do that, but I think, as you say, on a quarterly basis, we are going to be provided that information transparently and openly on where all of our spendings have occurred and to what amounts. And I think that that's why you brought it to us when we're doing our reviews. And when you brought our governance amendments that 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, something in that range. So, and that's why I mentioned also, if you want to do this seriatim, do them one at a time. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Probably no surprise, I don't support this initiative. Can't hear me? Sorry. I'm sure you probably know this. I know what I'm going to say anyway. I can't support this initiative. I think that it's a solution without a problem. I have not been able to identify a problem of such a degree that all of council's initiatives and expectations with regard to their professional development while they are councillors, they have to come cap in hand to council and ask for special permission to go to an environmental conference in Ottawa, say, which clearly would cost more than $1,000 and would, I suppose, have to be denied or hotly debated at great length. I think it's up to each individual councillor to determine what their professional development needs are. I also think it's up to each individual councillor to decide that they have professional development needs. I think each councillor should be taking advantage of professional development and conferences to upgrade our skills and our knowledge. It's wide-ranging what we have to know, the kinds of things we make decisions on. This feels a little bit like moving into the dreaded nanny state. I think it's overbearing that councillors would believe themselves to be better equipped to determine my educational needs, better equipped than I am to determine my educational needs. And finally, in the end, I think it's up to the electorate to decide and that may well be the outcome. But it is up to them. I think that it's not up to us to make these kinds of decisions about how a councillor will equip him or herself to do the things that they were elected to do. There was a motion passed, I'm trying to find the date on this, 4 or 5 years ago anyway, that that said that any travel within Canada for a conference, that council would approve that it was only necessary for travel outside of Canada that you would be required to come to council. So that was, the council of the day had confidence that their councillors could decide on how and what their needs were and how they would address them. That's my business, and I will take the hit from the electorate for deciding where I want to upgrade myself. So I really feel quite strongly that this is not progressive. I don't think that it's respectful of individuals on this council's ability to determine their own needs, and I think we should respect that.
Councillor Thorpe. Thank you, Chair. I think on the whole I can accept this motion, all three parts. I think professional development is extremely important and worthwhile, and I think this allowance appears to be generous enough. My only qualm would be in cases where councillors did come requesting additional money or approval. I would hope that approval or lack of approval wouldn't be based on politics or personal beliefs. For example, if I felt it would benefit me to go to a conference in Ottawa on global warming, I might feel that was important. Others might think it's a load of baloney and therefore would not approve it. That's just an example I'm using of, I think, a danger of this policy. That said, I'm sure that this group is professional enough that would not happen. I would certainly hope not, but I just point that out as a possibility. I do have a question through you, Mr. Chairman, to staff, and I think Councillor Bestwick's earlier comments helped answer it, but Mr. Mima, how does this proposed policy or motion differ from what we have as policy now, or do in fact we have policy now?
So what we have now is a pool system. Right. So we kind of like look at history and say, how much have we spent for council in the past 5 years going to conferences, and we put a number. And then people simply decide as and when they want to go somewhere. We obviously have the standing functions like UBCM and the like that are already provided for, which you go to. What we don't have is a mechanism from a budgeting perspective where we would come to you and say, here we're getting into the budgeting season, so can you tell us where you're going to go? So you pre-plan these things. And this gives you now a mechanism for you to say, okay, I have $1,000, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, whatever that looks like. And then when it comes to us reporting back at the end of each quarter or end of each year, we are able to say the allocation was this much and so much was spent. So what you don't have in the current practice is a way to benchmark what is reasonable.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. Obviously, professional development's an important thing, and it's an individual need. But the cost to the taxpayer is important, too, and I believe this is a transparency issue. This gives you the ability to go to those small conferences locally, but you still have the ability to ask your peers if you can go to a different conference. I'm looking at one I'd like to attend in June in Toronto. It's on water and water use. Is a phenomenal conference. I've been waiting for some of this. So it's more for me the transparency, is that you arrive at this table in front of the public and ask to represent the public at a meeting where you want to go. I can't believe that it would get to the point of politics, and that's a fear, and it's been voiced. So for me, it's about transparency. It's about giving a report. I mean, I come back from FCM once and gave a PowerPoint presentation. And, people got to see what we did. The interesting part, the person that asked for it said, you could have clipped that stuff off the internet. You didn't even go to that conference. Oh, sorry, Ron. You know who that was. I won't mention Ron's name. But so for me, it's self-education. Self-education without benefit to the community is another one to me. So if I go out and get educated and I make my decisions on it, but then the public doesn't know. So the report's huge to me. That we come back, and if 6 of us go to UBCM, we take pictures, one person puts it together, and you do a presentation, and people talk about the things they attended. So I think this is about accountability, and I think people are looking more for that. I do have a concern when I see some of the spending after it's been done. A year later, it's reported. And there has been some concern in how we travel and what we do. Like, I could go to Vancouver. I could take a heli jet over back and forth and stay in the Pan Pacific and blow a whole pile of money. But if I have a budget, I'm going to be more conscious about it. And so for me, it's about cost to the taxpayer, transparency, reporting, education with benefit to the community. And I'm willing to take my hit when I ask in front of the public. So for me, I support this.
Thank you, Councillor Kipp. Councillor Fuller.
I think this is hugely progressive, and it could be something that other communities will look at if they aren't already. Professional development, totally agree. We all need it. I need it. So far, I haven't seen anything yet that I would like to go to. Most of what I'm interested in, I can get off of webinars. So, like the unmentionable name before, I would do the webinars before I chose to head out of town to, take a little bit of a vacation for 3 or 4 days and attend a bunch of conferences. I fully intend to go to the FCM, the UBCM, and the AVICC once during my term. That's my personal belief. That's all I need to go to it for. If there's something extremely important and Councillor Kipp goes, he'll come back and do a report for me. So I don't need to be there for every one of these. That's my beliefs. For me, it is about accountability. It's about the taxpayers' monies. And it shouldn't be political. It really shouldn't.
Thanks, Gordon. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Up until this point in time, I don't know anybody for the 12 years that I've sat here that's been denied an opportunity to go to an event, education or otherwise, that they felt was important and necessary for them to be able to serve in their capacity. And I trust that that will probably continue. I don't think that there's a problem either, but I think that this might avoid or prevent one from having egg on your face if something does go awry. And so this puts people on notice. This just puts you on notice of what you have available or what you don't have available to you. I'm sure there's going to be some years when there's $5,500 there for the UBCM and FCM. I'm sure there's going to be times when in a year where a member of council doesn't attend either one. Or they attend one, or they go to the AVICC and UBCM, or whatever the case might be. So I think this is just simply one of those governance issues that will allow everybody to be fully aware, fully transparent, fully accountable, all the things that have been said before. And I, for one, would like to see that. And I think it's important that we address that. It wouldn't be in front of us through our governance recommendations, if it wasn't deemed and considered to be something that may help us, may keep us, protect us from ourselves, in essence. So I see it as a protection mechanism. I see it as an opportunity to open up lines of communication, because if we know that we have to bring, if I'm sitting at $700 or whatever and I want to go to an event, well, then I have to, in all likelihood, come to council and say I'm going to go over. So I don't see anything wrong with this at all. I think it is a measure of protection, and I think it's become a necessity. And if this will be something that we'll have an opportunity to vote on, and I look forward to voting on all three items.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to echo what Councillor Kip Fuller and Bestwick said, and I think this policy is a policy about being open, transparent, having a budget item so the taxpayers know that what we're spending, where it's not a bottomless pit, where 1 year can range from a few thousand up to 100,000 or whatever the case might be. But the fact of the matter is now there's going to be a number on a budget item for us to use, and that's going to be open and transparent, that the citizens are going to be able to see that. So I think we're going to be responsible. I think this is a move forward to be more responsible for taxpayers' money, which I think is something that we've all campaigned on, and I know I surely did. So it's something that I value. Coming back with a report, it's not unexpected. I think we should be doing that for what we need to do. And, furthering our education is important. I don't think that we're going to make this political. I think it's going to be about the options of going. I think bringing it forward so we know and the taxpayers know where we're going. At this point, nobody knows where I went until the end of the year. But if we have this, saying I'm requesting as a notice of motion that Councillor Hong is going to go with Councillor Kip to Toronto about water, or wherever it's going to be, that we have this information, and if the public really don't want us to go, or really want us to go, they're going to come to the gallery and let us know. So, and I think that is being accountable for the public and being open and transparent. So I will support these. I think it's 4 items. I think we added 1.
You have to add it to that.
Yeah, so I will support 4 items. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hong. Councillor Brennan?
Haven't changed my mind. Council hasn't denied anyone because no one's had to ask. So, we have to think about those things. Now, it seems to me if council can stop me from going to a conference that I think is important for my upgrading and my education, do I or any other group of councillors have an opportunity to get together and decide that one particular councillor does need some upgrading and that we want that councillor to go? I make a motion that Councillor X be asked to attend a meeting in Toronto. Do I have that opportunity? You can stop me. Can I force you? It's kind of the flip side of it. I'm the one determining that I think I need this education, and you're saying, no, we have a better idea about that. So I'm just wondering if the flip side works, where someone says I have adequate skills and education to do this, and some of us might say, no, we'd like you to take some upgrading. I just personally, I think it's a mistake. I don't think anybody's going to look to us as a lighthouse for this kind of this kind of policy. I think instead they will look to us as being somewhat overbearing and untrusting of our councillors, and I think that that's a shame. I think that that's a shame, but I do believe that that's how this will be perceived. So I won't support it.
Councillor Kip.
Thank you. Yeah, I might vote against someone if they wanted to go to a Donald Trump rally in Texas. I might go, nah, not worth going. But somebody might think it's worth going to. I got asked by council to attend an incinerator meeting in Vancouver. I didn't want to go. but somebody else was going, and the council thought it would be good to have two people go. So I got asked to go, and I ended up going over to a thing with a meeting in Vancouver about the incinerator. So I think it's a personal issue that we're feeling the fear of what we wouldn't be allowed to go to, and it is becoming political at this point. So I'd like to call the question.
Sure. Just a quick, thank you, Councillor Kip. Just a quick comment is I definitely supported this. I'm all about mostly number 2, about the reporting mechanism, because we don't hear too much reporting from dollars we spent from the taxpayers. Nevertheless, Councillor Bestwick moved it. Councillor Kip seconds it. With the amended number 4 added, can you just read the new number 4, please, for...
That council amend the spending and council spending and amenities policy to include these changes, the 3
Thank you.
above.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Pratt, Councillor Brennan opposed. Motion passed. Item B, Councillor Hong, Nanaimo Youth Poe Laureate Program.
No, we have to do.
Oh,
That was as amended. Now we have to do the motion. No? Oh, it's just a friendly? Okay, thank you. Sorry.
thank you. No, sorry. Thanks, guys. Councillor Hong's motion, Nanaimo Youth Poet Laureate Program. Motion that council direct staff to prepare a report regarding the Nanaimo Youth Laureate Program. Moved by Councillor Hong, second by Councillor Kip. All in favor? Passed unanimous. Thank you very much.
Can I have a point?
Yes, absolutely.
I'd really like to ask Councillor Hong to have a meeting with the youth group, and if they could prepare a bit of a vision of what they see. They've been involved now for over a year. They've attended an ABICC. It'd be neat to kind of book a meeting with council and talk about some of the youth vision. I'd really like to do that.
Yeah, Councillor Hong, sorry. Yeah.
Councillor Kip, the youth, we're going to come forward and present actually to the council as well, and then meet with them as well. They're planning right now with Mr. Horn about a piano. They're putting out the open music one. They're working on right now with some of the little libraries, and we're preparing for the float for the Heritage Days. So after these events, they had planned on coming before council and then meeting individually with a session with council and division. So it is on their agenda before the end of June. Okay.
Thanks, gentlemen. This time, question period.
Fred Taylor of 204 Emery Way. Could you tell me, staff, if the records for the districts that were involved in amalgamation were searched for the question on Portsmouth?
Staff, can you please try to help us here?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, I'm not aware of what all files were reviewed, but I'd be happy to have that discussion with Mr. Taylor tomorrow and update him.
I spent 2 weeks with another party in Victoria in provincial government, photocopying with their photocopiers all the land use records of the districts that came into amalgamation, and brought the copy to the city vault. I understand Chris Schoberg made a copy for his own to manually use, but it's a paper copy of all land uses, hopefully for legal questions, etc., from the provincial government before amalgamation. And that, hopefully, all those records, the pile of records, are still in as a package in the city vault. Another question, sir. Great job, Acting Mayor. What authority do you have, sir, in demanding the report on commercial, industrial, unsightly properties?
What do I report? Sorry?
What authority do you have?
As acting mayor. I'm kidding. I don't know the...
I'm passing it back to you, sir.
What authority do I have to?
Sightly industrial commercial properties. I've stood here many a time. Where's the report? I've even had answers, well, give us complaints, which has been done. But when's it going to happen? So I'm asking you as acting mayor if you have any authority to demand it.
I'm not sure I have any authority to demand it, but it has been brought forward to staff, and well received. I hear your question, and as acting mayor, I'll have a conversation with staff.
I do have a response for
Thanks.
So, Mr. Taylor, though. The RDN, we actually did go through a bigger step. Remember the old pallet location that moved up there by Horn Lake that city or RDN staff did get involved with commercial / industrial / in a residential zone. So somehow the RDN did it. So I'm sure we can get staff to figure it out.
Districts that came into the city, like Harewood, different districts, Wellington, and all those, were under provincial government control for changes in land use, which were all paper records, not fish. And I photocopied them all. Spent 2 weeks in Victoria doing that with help. And because the provincial government realized that you may need that for legal cases someday. And I photocopied it all, and it was all put as a package into this vault. I know Chris Schoberg made a copy for hand use. It's up to you people to search those records for what.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Minhas regarding DP 989. I just feel like carrying on with this open and transparency issue that I present a few facts and a little bit more information regarding Councillor Hong, Councillor Thorpe, and Councillor Fuller's concerns. Just some preamble to that. My building permit application was dated May 22nd. My building permit was issued on July 2nd, and I didn't have a PLA until September 24th. With every building permit, you get this sheet. It lists all the conditions and issues with your building permit, tells you the spatial separation, tells you the water size, tells you how to access and egress the property. If it's a temporary access, it tells you the height of the building and where your heat pump's supposed to go, the engineering requirements. It doesn't say anything about this common proposed access. I also have my building permit drawings here that nowhere indicate in red ink that it has a shared common access with the building permit. Move forward to September 24th.
So, sorry to interrupt, is there a question?
Yeah, I'll come to
okay.
that question.
Thanks.
Yeah. I just wanted you to be aware of the information because it was lacking in the staff report, and I didn't have an opportunity to present it because the motion was already in front of you. So that's what's bringing me forward just in this question period, because I felt it was important that this be heard and understood. If this were to, I'll talk to staff tomorrow if this comes back, or I don't know what the ramifications or recourse is for this moving forward, because I strongly believe in that access. So I didn't get the PLA until September 24th, and in that PLA, it was the common access was outlined. Since September 24th to March 20th, I asked repeatedly on many different occasions to have a development permit variance. I was never granted that opportunity, and it actually came forward in a meeting with Dale, and he was the first guy to say that we can come forward. The meeting was held March 23rd, and this was supposed to come to council on March 17th, but got pushed because the staff didn't have the time to do the report, and it came forward now. But that was the first time and it came forward as an amendment and not even as a permit application. So I tried, and I didn't circumvent any rules or laws. This isn't the first time in front of you. It's not the last time I'm going to be in front of you. I'm doing a lot of projects in town, and I'm not trying to, I don't know what the right thing here is, but to the question of this variance, or why didn't you come before us? Well, I didn't get a PLA till September 24th. I tried, and I have emails, my engineers have emails, and I didn't ask my consultant until just recently if I had the right for this variance application, which I was entitled to, but staff says it should be an amendment because they didn't support and wouldn't accept my application for a variance at that time. And Mr. Lindsay is privy to that information. So having said that, I wanted to answer those questions that Councillor Hong and Thorpe and Fuller and anyone else that may have had. But if there is any other concerns in terms of this application, or not having all the information to make an informed decision from both sides, that's what I wanted to offer here. So that's the question I wanted to answer, to make sure that everyone has all the information so they can make a informed, insightly decision. And respectfully, I don't think staff is doing anything wrong. Respectfully, that's my opinion, to believe that my application and the way I present it is the best viable solution, moving the city's design forward, the building, the product, the single-family aspect of that lot is it has its own access. It's not a shared access. It's not a strata. It's not a townhouse. It's not going to be a duplex. And so I wanted to kind of share those things.
I'm just going to interrupt for a sec, please. I'm not hearing a question there yet, but maybe you have a question for the council. But I do have two speakers. Can we go to the two councils?
Yeah.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Gar. How long have you been doing this in Nanaimo?
I've been a licensed builder for 10 years.
So you know that you can come to council for variance anytime.
I tried to, that's what I'm saying, Mr. Hong, that I did try on many occasions to apply for a variance, but wasn't given that opportunity at the counter. It wasn't until March 23rd that came forward, that this is an opportunity or an option for me to come forward. That's why I'm here at this late moment. My PLA is being pulled. There is no active PLA until this matter is being resolved, or can be resolved.
But you built without a PLA, is what you're saying.
Built without,
so the house is already built.
That's true, yes.
So why
would you? I
would
was issued a building permit, and then after the building permit, I was informed with staff's direction and my surveyor's legal certificate that property can be subdivided. So further, after the building permit application, we submitted an application for a PLA, which was issued on September 24th, which then outlined all the conditions of a subdivision. At the building permit stage, there was no outline saying, you only get this one access, you have to do this, you have to do that. These are the conditions of the building permit here.
I don't hear a question.
But
don't
most builders build until they have a PLA? Isn't that how it usually works?
I'm just going to intervene here as chair and for question period. So I need, Gary, your question is around variance and possibly I hear next steps, or is there next steps? I don't have an answer at this point. I'll leave that to staff. But before that, sorry, Jerry, because I don't think it's Councillor Bestwick. And then I want to get to is there a question?
Yeah, I'll defer to the delegation if he wishes to ask a question.
Yeah, I need, is there a question for council or staff?
Well, having said this, knowing that you didn't have all the information required to make an informed decision, can this matter be brought forward at the next possible opportunity?
There's the question. I'm going to defer that now to staff.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to comment on the statement that all the necessary information wasn't before you. I believe from staff's perspective it was. In terms of the specific question of reconsideration of an application, under Council's procedures and notification bylaw, if an application is defeated, it's a 6-month waiting period to reapply for an application. That can be waived by the majority of council.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Actually, do you have any other questions?
Right?
Yeah, you have. I'm not sure.
Is that something council would consider then?
Well, I don't think at this point. I'm not speaking for all the council, but in my view, conversations we have to be had between yourself with the information that Mr. Lindsay is hearing about for the first time. And I think you guys have a respectful meeting and have that dialogue and go from there would be a fair comment. Thank you. Thank you. And yes, thank you. Question period. Any more questions?
Robert Fuller, 3350 Hammond Bay Road. I'm going to have a question concerning 8D, the acting mayor pay rate, and 14A, the council travel and conference funds. It seems that council is attempting to cobble together a series of motions and bylaws as of lately to give transparency, responsibility, and accountability on the part of council. Yet it seems to miss one main point, and that is the ghost in the room. The absence of meetings, which one would assume councillors and mayor should be attending to fulfill the duties of his or her elected office. And my question is, has council considered a bylaw and to attach this bylaw to on the issue of missed meetings to council remuneration?
Councillor Beswick.
Mr. Mima might be able to answer this better than I, but I believe that there is a bylaw that is permissive in terms of missing so many meetings consecutively before you are constitutionally deemed to not have fulfilled your duties. And I think it's 3 committee of the whole meetings in a row, but I could be wrong.
It's 4, and it's in the community charter, and or 60 days.
I think it's consecutive. Is it consecutive meetings? Yeah, I think it's consecutive meetings. So that's the only thing that I can try to answer your question with, and you know the answer better than I do. So,
I've been searching through the various municipalities in this province, and they seem to hold the community charter in high esteem, as do most of us, most parts of it. But as one notices, through what we've all heard, one could miss 3 meetings, then go to the next one, then miss 2 meetings, go to the next 2, then decide to miss 3 more. If I did that in the private world, I'd be fired. It's simple. There is one district, it's the district of Tofino, that does have a bylaw attached to the council remuneration, stipulating that there are penalties if you miss up to a certain amount of meetings. And I was wondering if council would consider forming a bylaw, or even thinking about forming a bylaw and passing it and putting it into the council, attaching it to the council remuneration in the interests of the taxpayers, accountability, responsibility, and transparency. I'll be speaking to this next week as I'm on a delegation at the Committee of the Whole on this issue of council remuneration, and I'll bring up the bylaw. I'll send it to each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Bob.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Fuller.
You're totally aware of the community charter?
Yes.
BC law?
Yes.
Can you name, and I'm not defending the mayor for missing meetings, can you bring up an instance where he has breached the community charter and that law? That is BC law.
He hasn't breached the community charter that I know of.
So that's what we need to change. That's one thing we need to change, is work on the community charter. Now, the interesting thing that you did mention is remuneration for meetings missed.
Yes.
That we may have some pull on. We may be able to do something like that. And it's definitely worth consideration, because I don't think there's anything in the community charter that says a municipality cannot penalize a person if they haven't
There
breached.
shouldn't be if the District of Tofino has it on their books and it's still on their books.
Yep. Thank you.
So, Mr. Fuller there is basically talking about the same thing I asked about earlier. And so I'll rephrase it and ask it to you this way. Will you please direct your staff to investigate whether or not it's possible to pass a bylaw that docks not only the mayor, but also your salaries as well, if it's deemed that you're missing an excessive amount of meetings. You could put a number on it, whatever. Those are details that could be figured out. But I'm asking that you please direct your staff to investigate this possibility instead of just saying, yeah, that's a great idea. How about actually doing something about it? Please. Well, then you shouldn't be a counselor.
Thank you, Mr. Wager. In echoing your words and what we heard from Mr. Fuller, we look forward to receiving a bylaw, and I'm sure we can.
It seems like an easy enough thing for them to do.
Any comments, Council? Or?
You can write all the rules you want, whether they're enforceable or not, whether they can be
investigate. Sorry to
instituted,
interrupt.
whether they can be managed, and whether it's like who's going to monitor and deduct the paychecks and that. So there's cost attached to everything we do. So by adding another rule doesn't always make it beneficial or efficient. So I agree with you though. I think if you start missing too much.
Occurs to me that we have several hundred staff, and that probably one of them could find the time to do this. We have all kinds of people working in the financial department. Surely one of them has some extra time. I don't imagine they're all being worked to death. Just guessing. I don't see how there could be a problem getting this going, really, myself. Of course, I'm not an expert. I'm just a citizen that cares about things.
Thanks.
Thank you, Terry.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Second by Council Bestwick. All in favor. Have a good evening.